Meeting to order at 3:03 p.m. This is a special meeting of the Stewart City Commission on September 21st. Ms. Latour, will you call the roll, please?
Mayor Meyer,
Here.
Vice Mayor Clark, Commissioner Bruner,
Here.
Commissioner Matheson,
Here.
Commissioner McDonald,
Here.
Thank you. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Move on to comments by our city commissioners. Commissioner McDonald, do you have any comments?
I have no comments today.
Commissioner Matheson?
No comments.
Yes, sir.
None. I have none for this meeting. Mr. Dias, do you have any comments before we begin?
Yes, sir, just briefly. Vice Mayor Clark informed me that she is at a hearing, that she will be attending the meeting, but she'll probably be coming in late. That's why she's not here currently. And I just want to announce that big thank you to Helen McBride, who has accepted our nomination to the NPO Citizens Advisory Committee. She's now a City of Stewart Citizens Advisory NPO.
Yes.
Yes, thank you for that important additional piece of information. Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Move for approval. Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner McDonald and a second by Commissioner Matheson. Is there any public comment on the agenda? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we'll take comments from the public, general public comment. We have two discussion deliberation items. If we are to take any action on these items, I would ask that you reserve your comment if it pertains to either Stewart Main Street or our sustainability action plan during those agenda items. Any general public comment?
I should notify you that I received an email right now. From Robert Steinberg that says, Mike, at 2:56, I am unable to get into the Zoom meeting. I emailed him back with connection information. He said, if I can't get in, would you kindly read this into the record? In reading the manner, it looks to be related to the Main Street, but I'm not going to draw that conclusion for him, so I don't know if we're going to read it now or then.
I think that's appropriate.
Commissioners, as you know, I've never opposed to Main Street's activities promoting downtown, which to varying degrees we all feel has importance. I do object to handling the Flagler Waterfront Event Center over to them under circumstances I characterize as backroom dealing, poorly thought through, and lacking broad benefit to the citizens of Stewart. I am aware of what is on your minds today. Perhaps I can stimulate the discussion. As I mentioned a few weeks ago, based on the language of the Flagler lease and what I know to be the application of public records and sunshine to an organization which assumes a quasi-governmental function, I asked for the most basic, benign records for Main Street. I was told by Nick Schroff that the request was beyond the scope of the lease agreement. Mark Breckville in an email maintains the organization private nonprofit status. I then sent a certified letter to their executive director explaining what I wanted to see and why it was guaranteed to me by both the lease and the public records law. I refer you to the Government and the Sunshine Manual for a complete analysis of their obligations as an agency of this municipality. My certified letter did not receive a reply. Briefly, when a non-for-profit takes on a managerial role in a public building, it is supported with taxpayer funds, has an integral decision-making position, and functions for the benefit of the public, not for the profit of the board members. That organization becomes subject to sunshine in exactly the same manner as commissioners, advisory board members, and city staff. That this established and well-known fact did not come up during the Flagler lease process does not speak well for either the city or the organization. So, in your discussion of the relationship between the city and Stewart Main Street, this should be the only thing of importance this afternoon. Main Street can no longer avoid the facts or lawful demands. Should the organization wish to maintain a still questionable private position, they can retreat to the position they enjoyed before occupying the Flagler. The subleases to private parties are now pay operating costs. The city can well afford to manage the facility in a fair and cooperative manner former city managers Collier, Hudson, and Nicoletti envisioned for the center. Robert Steinberg, Stuart, Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Mortel. Seeing no other public comments, we will move directly into our agenda item number 1. And is that Ms. Callahan? Stuart Main Street, yes. Or do we have a, Mr. Kolsky, would you like to open everything up?
Sure. This is a city commission workshop with Stewart Main Street that was requested by the city. And Candace Callahan is the new executive director and is here to present the workshop PowerPoint.
Thank you, Mr. Kolsky. Ms. Callahan?
Okay, so can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So good afternoon, Commission. Yes, I am Candace Callahan. I am the new Executive Director of Stewart Main Street. And I want to give us a little refresher on what Main Street actually is. So first and foremost, our mission is to create and promote a positive downtown experience for residents, businesses, and visitors. How we do that is following a 4-star approach that's set for, from Main Street America. We focus on economic vitality, design, promotion, and organization. Design focuses on the character, the atmosphere, and historic preservation and accessibility of our downtown. Economic vitality focuses on diverse economic base with new investment opportunities and entrepreneurship. Promotion, of course, focuses on marketing the district's defined assets. So in a sense, we are the storytellers for downtown. Organization, that focuses on our board engagement to help build a strong leadership and partnerships in our community. Our board of directors our organization is built a little structured like this. We've had to do some restructuring since the introduction of Flagler. But as you can see, it's a well-rounded board with very well-known established business owners. Then we look at our district. We looked at our district as what it used to be back in 1987 when we were established. And look at today. We've expanded out down to Colorado. And our main objectives are to advocate, do historical preservation, build strong partnerships, and fundraise. And as you can see, some of our partnerships there. So, without addressing our past, we can't really approach the future. We have to know where we came from. We've established, like I said, in 1987, so we've been proudly serving our downtown and our community for 33 years. Now, Main Street America was established in 1980. We were shortly thereafter in 1987. So a list of our accomplishments, which most of you all well know. So, all of those, as you can see, focus on one of the points in which we're focused on. So we have, again, economic vitality, design, promotion, and organization. So where are we now? I think that's what we're here to talk about. So there's me. I'm new to the organization. I look forward to leading this organization to the new chapter. Flagler Center. So we didn't quite get our feet under us, did we, when we moved in? We moved in January. We signed our lease agreement. We moved in January, and what happened shortly thereafter? So we couldn't fulfill a lot of our responsibilities, our duties, and our business plan that we had formulated wasn't going to really work out. So we're in a new phase, and here we are to talk about that. Looking at our event calendar, which is a part of our promotions. In October of 2019, we started with the Fall Craft Show, followed by Hobgoblins, the Sidewalk Sale, Christmas on Main, Winter Stroll, and then in February of 2020, we completed the Arts Festival in the later part of the month. The rest of the calendar was put on hold, obviously, for reasons we know. And then you look at our year-round river walk, our Rock and River Walk, we have that every Sunday, 52 weeks a year. In 2020, we were able to complete 10 of those and 9 virtually. So let's talk about the future a little bit before I bring Nick up for the next part of the presentation. So again, I'm new here, probably 6 weeks in. We're going to be focusing on introducing new board members, new committee members, and maybe even introducing some new committees to bring more valuable input to our downtown. We're going to work on rebranding and marketing the Flagler Center to increase traffic and public use. We're going to develop new events in working with our promotions committee and the DBA, and maybe even modify some of our favorites. We're going to restructure our membership and sponsorship and fundraising opportunities so we can become a little bit more independently sustainable. And develop volunteer opportunities to meet today's current environment. We want to provide valuable deliverables to the city because we value that partnership as part of our agreement. And then lastly, I'll bring up Nick. We want to talk about a new project for Osceola Street. And I think that concludes my spiel.
Thank you, Ms. Callahan. Mr. Schroth?
Commission, make this thing a little taller here. So as Candace mentioned, this is a project that we worked on a couple years ago. I think Mike McCarty put this together in 2018. And we discussed it with a number of stakeholders, with the commission, with staff, and you know, there was at the time there was a lot of question of, you know, if the city moves out of City Hall, where does it go? That seems to have somewhat of an answer. So this has kind of been pulled off the shelf and brought back to life. And what we can see, or what we feel like Stewart Main Street can have a vital and as well positioned to provide is a thorough study of how this area here that we're currently sitting in might look in the future. And this concept was brought about through a couple of roundtable discussions with our board, with members on our board that include land use attorneys, land design professionals, landscape architects, real estate brokers and developers, appraisers. The concept here is an infrastructure plan. So we wouldn't be telling you what to build in these places, but how to make the downtown, what's worked in the downtown and what hasn't worked. And so this was a project we worked on a couple of years ago that we'd like the commission to ask us to continue to work on. We would, you know, provide a couple of scenarios that might work and, you know, gain community feedback, use the Flagler Center to help gain that community feedback. Last year, you'll recall, staff may recall, we had an economic roundtable at the Flagler Center with a number of professionals ranging from engineers to land planners to landscape architects. I think a few of the growth management folks in Pinal were there, and that, you know, helped the city with their EAR report. And so this is kind of another opportunity that we can use our design committee, we can use our economic vitality committee to provide, you know, a valuable service, a valuable, you know, valuable future for the, or you know, design for the commission to consider and make a decision on. So the concept is an infrastructure plan. The ultimate goal would be to connect Flagler Park and Flagler Place to downtown. If you go outside right now, you're directed to Flagler Street or Flagler Avenue. You're not directed to downtown or to Flagler Park. So the concept here is an infrastructure plan that connects downtown to a prized asset of Flagler Park and Flagler Place. What we propose for this as our scope of work would be for our design committee and the economic vitality committee to take that 2018 plan, meet with commissioners, meet with stakeholders, and update that. We would collect that feedback, begin a framework of how this might be implemented, and then ultimately present that to the commission for their decision. And this is just a concept scope of work. We can discuss it and tweak it, but we would like to include this as a, you know, as something that Stewart Main Street works on in this next year of its cycle, and particularly with our new executive director, Candace, at the helm. With that, I'd like to take some questions from, a couple of other things that we can do as a organization that has a presence in downtown and has had a presence in downtown for over 30 years is we can provide valuable input on issues that are coming before the commission that the commission maybe doesn't have, or staff doesn't have the tools to, provide that feedback. We can, for instance, there's a discussion right now about electric scooters. Are they good? Are they bad? Do we want them? Do we not? Through our social media contacts, through our email list, through the Flagler Center, through discussions with stakeholders, we can gather that information. We can provide that information. We can, whether it's surveys or any kind of other form or format that we come up with and agree is a good format, we can give that information to the commission so the commission can make the decisions that it needs to make based on, accurate and thorough information. We've been talking with Pinal regarding a historical structure survey that's hasn't been updated, I think, since 2003. And so there's a discussion about updating that. Those are the kind of things that Stewart Main Street is geared for and in a unique place to be able to assist the city with. The board development and education organization. So we currently have a couple of board vacancies. Dave Collier was a board member. He passed away recently. And so, as Candace gets her feet underneath us with a new executive director, we're going to look to fill those board vacancies with key people that can help us with matters that affect downtown. I think one of the things that we've all realized here with the bridge shutting down is just how much of an impact traffic on US 1 or the lack thereof has on the downtown. And a discussion that's been had in our board meetings over the years has been, how do we connect US 1 to downtown in a better fashion? So this morning I attended an MPO meeting and kind of put that out there that Stewart Main Street would be paying more attention to how US 1 and downtown function and connect. I know speaking with Bill when the bridge was shut down, it really just shut down downtown, because if that traffic on US 1 isn't functioning right, then it never has the opportunity to get to downtown. And I don't think it's just a matter of fixing what's currently broken. I think it's a matter of making that better so that when FDOT is out there doing projects, that project involves and considers how do we better downtown? How do we better the city of Stewart and the assets that it has? In some other matters that I've been working on with staff on dealing with the DOT, it's much easier to get in the door before they've made a decision than it is after the fact. So it's key to put pressure and be a voice in the room early on, and that's one of the things that we're hoping to do here with our board, with some of the appointments that we make, and with our new executive director. So that touches on the 4-star approach there: design, organization, promotion, economic vitality. When this workshop was first brought to my attention, I was out of town. I apologize for not being at the meeting, but I did ask all the commissioners to provide, a couple of questions. What makes you most proud of downtown? What would you like to see improved in downtown? And what future projects could you see Stewart Main Street taking on and helping the city with as an organization focused on keeping our downtown vital and keeping the spirit of downtown as vibrant as it can be? So with that, I'll take questions, and we can, I'd like to hear your feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Schrock. Any of my colleagues want to jump in with a question or comment? Or, okay, I'll get started. I wanted to ask a little bit about, I just wanted to follow the kind of the history of the expansion, as Ms. Callahan had given us some timeline maps and how originally in the 80s we had the kind of core downtown district, and then in 2015 I think the map said it was expanded out to include touching along East Ocean, it appeared. Yeah, maybe we'll jump back a bit. Down, yeah, here we go. Great.
Yep.
Down Colorado, down Ocean, Osceola. For me, I'm interested in how the new board seats will maybe reflect some of those expansion areas. I think that's a really important thing to help broaden the scope. And, I guess my overall comment with regard to the geographic focus of Main Street is that Main Street and the work that your organization has done in concert with the city and the local businesses and the DBA has proven successful. Downtown is great, and it used to be a ghost town. So for me, I'm a little more, I like the idea of the vision of kind of extending Osceola and linking it with Flagler. For me, I want to see, and we've spoken about this, over the last few years, I'd like to see that same kind of energy and promotion and focus on expanding, on creating a sense of place in a downtown district and expanding it outward. So whether that means focusing really on what we want to do with this parcel where City Hall is that we'll eventually move from someday, and then linking that up to Flagler Park, or for me, I'm more interested in maybe bringing that kind of vibrancy and that focus down Ocean towards the new City Hall. And an important part of that will also be, I think, linking the development along Ocean to what's happening on MLK. How do those two major thoroughfares talk to each other and are designed and planned together? And then certainly with all the energy around the arts and entertainment district, how can the Creek benefit from your organization, whether or not you guys are working together? I feel like the Creek is another place for some focus and improvement. So just as a general note, I love the events. I know they're important. I want to support our downtown businesses, but I think if we're really talking about vision and what is Stewart Main Street's next chapter, well, that's what it is for me. It's how do we take the successes you've done over the last 30, 40 years and bring them into the future, expanding downtown to these key areas along Ocean, along Colorado, along MLK.
Yeah, I agree with all that. And I think to offer a little bit of history, and some of this history is kind of secondhand because it comes from before me, but Stewart Main Street had a pretty pivotal role in the improvements to Colorado Avenue and into making those improvements become what they are today. And that was really the light switch that went off for the Colorado Avenue corridor between US 1 and downtown. Prior to those improvements, you had a good year, you had a law firm, and it was a fairly stagnant stretch of road that people, much the same way US 1 is right now, people just kind of had to get through it, so they got through it. Those improvements were a city initiative that Stewart Main Street provided a role in. Now, we did, when those improvements were first completed and a lot of new businesses started to open up, we had a Colorado Avenue committee, and that didn't quite have the desired outcome, but we have talked more recently about, the possibility of bringing someone on as a board member. And rather than making it a committee that has to have its own meetings and kind of being this whole other layer of bureaucracy, just kind of welcoming them into our fold as somebody that, maybe represents a little bit different area, but still has, it's all feeding off of that downtown area. So I think that approach is a little bit better than the previous approach of just creating a committee and trying to sort of facilitate what they've got going on and get an understanding and bring what they've got going on into what we've going on. The board membership might be a little bit better avenue there.
So you are, one minute. So you are actively pursuing a board member from the Creek?
It's been discussed, and from like an executive level, we've talked about it. We haven't presented anybody to the board. We're
Okay.
still kind of open to ideas. So certainly, if you have a nominee that you'd like to throw out there, please get with Candace and discuss that. As far as East Ocean, with the city moving to the old Wells Fargo building, or potentially moving to the old Wells Fargo building, now owning that property, it certainly does begin to bridge the gap between the between between East Ocean and what is the existing downtown. The challenge with that, Ocean to MLK connection is when you look at this development in here and you've got, the ball fields, you've got a courthouse, you've got a lumber yard. There's not that fluid connection, but certainly with the city moving in that direction, it starts to move it in that direction.
Sure.
So it's certainly something that can be on our radar. Just as recently as starting to put this proposal together and discuss with Commissioner Matheson the US 1 situation, there might be some missed opportunity in getting our boundary here and even across the street a little bit, because there's a handful of businesses over here that have really suffered from the bridge closure as well, particularly when you get into the current traffic patterns and kind of how unknown this little area is here. You get a lot of alleyways and it's
Right.
hard to get in and out of there. So there's some good that we can bring there. So I mean, it's not something we want to be changing every day, but it's certainly something that we can take a look at and see what makes sense.
Right.
One of the things that we have discussed in our board, at kind of nauseum, is downtown Stewart has gotten to a place where it's good. People like it. We have events and a lot of people come. So, it's, sometimes the biggest problems are the easiest to fix because you can at least know what the problem is. And so we're kind of in this position where we don't know, what we really need to be doing to get downtown to that next step, but we know what we currently do works. So you don't want to change too much of it. Obviously COVID has kind of changed a lot of it for us. So, that post-COVID might be the big lift that we need to help fix. But certainly, the more feedback, the better. And I do think that taking a role of, or taking the position of bringing some folks from what I would call some of these outer boundaries into our board, as opposed to trying to create separate committees or another layer of meetings or whatever, might be a better approach. And so that's where the discussion currently lies.
Commissioner?
I'm going to try to bring a little history, especially to Colorado, because, Eula was there, but Eula's not here right now. I was certainly on the commission at the time that we approved that, and Main Street was very integral in the approval process. The design was actually created, from what I understand, created by the city before I became a city commissioner. But it was the first big thing that we dealt with, and there was a lot of opposition to it. There was a lot of people that were scared of change.
Right.
And fear, there is, change. People are fearful of change. I met with several of the business owners. In fact, at the time, my wife's father owned a building. I actually had to recuse myself from the vote because of my wife's father's building at the corner of it's the blue one at the Circle now. So it used to be brown. But Main Street, I believe it was Annie McMillan and Julie Priest brought in a expert on road diets. I can't remember his name, and we did a walking tour of downtown. We talked about how, and I have to admit, I was leery at first about how much it would improve, but by the time the city commission actually made the decision to go ahead and move forward with the project, I was comfortable with it. Even with that, I was surprised at the speed which Colorado turned around. I think we can all agree that that our return on investment came back a lot faster than we anticipated. Mr. Glassroot invested a lot of money into the 555 building, and then also the Goodyear, and we now have seen, I think, one of the last buildings that really need renovated was the old Slocum Weber building. So, but that's the kind of thing that was happening years before, long before I came here, with the Lyric Theater and some of the, and it was the personal sacrifices and efforts of a lot of Main Street members that got downtown going. So I think those are, and as I've spoke with Nick and Candace, that's the kind of thing I really want to see is Main Street helping, not only helping with the discussions of, as we discuss different projects, but also the projects that Main Street gets behind. Obviously, they need to be behind them as a board and as their members, that they help with the communications It's really hard to get communication out to the general public now because the newspapers aren't here discussing like they used to be. So that's one of the most important things that I think you guys can do. So, but I think that that public communication and advocacy is probably one of the most important things you do. I also do like the events. I think especially Rock and River Walk, very popular because we do need to bring people into the downtown for the merchants and for the businesses. And then, could you go back to the expansion map?
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the things I've always believed is that we should, as a city commission, we should kind of look at expanding what I like to call the veil of downtown.
Mhm.
And so I look at what is yellow outside the red as well as what's inside the red, but expanding it out to like Fraser Creek and up to through, see, I'm trying to figure out where everything is. Johnson, where's US 1? Okay, there's US 1. Johnson Avenue. We redid all of that in the Woodlawn Park over down MLK.
Mhm.
As far as you mentioned connections to the US 1 connections, if you both mentioned those, one of the, I think, most important connections, and you have to forgive me, I do not know the status of this, and it may be completely gone now, but the Willoughby extension would have came out right at Dixie Cutoff Road, which then there could have been an intersection there, which would bring people to Dixie Highway right into downtown from Palm City and from South Stewart without going on US 1.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of that right of way the city had acquired. The county had agreed twice, they had to agreed to do it, but they said, as soon as we finish another project, and we said, you know, those projects are really important, go ahead and do those first. And twice they reneged on it. So, or 3 times they've now reneged on it. So I'm not sure, Mr. Dias, do you know what
You
this
guys, the commission voted, took the, rescinded the MOU with the county.
Okay, so-
Gave the money back
So-
The MPO is pursuing it.
is? It, because I know
to the MPO, but it's not in the 5-year plan at this time.
yeah, I had gotten it put into the long-range transportation plan, or I think it was forgive me, it's been a long time. I believe it was the LRTP several years ago, so that at least would be in the NPO. But the problem, there was a challenge there because it was not a federal project, and that would federalize it, which complicates issues.
So it's either handled by the county or the MPO.
Well,
But they
it
didn't
still
want
has
to
to be, the
integrate.
county still has to build it. It's just,
Funded by FDOT versus.
right, or
right.
yeah, through FDOT, through federal funds. And it's just, one of the challenges is that it was the right of way that's already collected, it had been acquired. For example, when they did the new Indian Street Bridge, the Veterans Memorial Bridge, that was initially a state and local project, and all of the right of way that they purchased, the homes that they purchased for right of way, when they federalized it to get stimulus money, they had to go back and find everybody they bought a home and send them a second check because the formula used to buy their homes wasn't enough money. So even though they willingly sold their homes for, say, $10,000, we had to send them another $12,000. I mean, it's the craziest thing you ever heard, but that's the way our federal government wastes money. So I think those are some of the things, just some of my thoughts. And I think that Candace, I've talked to Candace a couple times. I think she's getting, for just being in this role a month or so, I think you got a great handle of things. And I wish you a lot of luck. So.
Well, thanks, Commissioner. And I just, as far as the connectivity goes, that's an important point. I mean, I think what I would like Main Street to do is to help us navigate some of those pinch points and challenges. I mean, is a major roadblock to an expanded downtown vitality, is it access to the area? I mean, would a Willoughby extension to Dixie Cutoff help significantly? Yes, no, I don't know. So I think it would be important, that sort of feedback from Main Street could be important. And certainly if we were to be pursuing those projects, I'd want their help and feedback and community engagement as we do that. But I'm thinking when I brought up the connectivity with MLK, for instance, and to your point, there is a lot of infrastructure between Ocean and MLK. But as you know, as we envision out into the future, you know, I'm thinking of the planning aspect of how we're designing Ocean and thinking about bringing vitality to Ocean. There's a direct connection to MLK and, you know, going all the way down to Palm Beach Road. And so, you know, I'm just thinking about that from a planning perspective, not necessarily, you know, infrastructure or anything. It's more just sort of how are we growing in that direction and what does it mean for the adjacent area. So, you know, but as far as expanding it and the fear, I mean, when you brought up the little businesses over there along Shepherd Park, my first thought was, I'm sure there's plenty of, you know, residential in there that don't want additional traffic. They don't want people hanging out around there. So you're right. That's going to be a challenge no matter what we do. But I feel like Main Street is the kind of organization that can help us identify where the biggest need is for incorporating, you know, an expansion to this focus.
Well, and one of the reasons I went back to our organizational chart here was to highlight some of the people that you see in our organization. And I think, you know, oftentimes the disconnect is, well, if we invest in infrastructure, then, you know, something else is going to happen. And, you know, something else can't happen without that infrastructure, but it's kind of beholden upon somebody to get the word out to the private property owners and such to see that the properties along that infrastructure path or along that route, you know, take action and capitalize on the improvements made. So, you know, Glasswood, for instance, capitalized on Colorado. You know, my role with Stewart Main Street kind of comes as the heir to Boyd Bradfield's role here. And he, you know, patrioted the Riverwalk extension and worked with those property owners along Seminole to, you know, allow that Riverwalk to be extended, you know, across their property and, you know, get easements from them. You know, the type of thing that if a government official shows up at your property and says, hey, can I have an easement so that I can run, you know, a sidewalk across it? Probably not met with the same, you know, response as if your, you know, trusted broker shows up. So, you know, a lot of the members on our board, both currently and past, see that vision and offer some of the tools necessary to see that executed. And so, you know, Seminole Street's starting to come along. Y'all have infrastructure projects proposed there. There's real projects proposed, you know, albeit it's development, so everything happens a little slower than we'd all like to see it. But then when it does happen super fast, everybody says, hey, you know, everything's happening too fast. So, you know, the members on this board are, you know, bring a lot of talent and bring a lot of, you know, bring a resume to the table that helps the city. And that's really what we're here to do is to help those infrastructure projects become meaningful economic benefits for the city.
So when I
Commissioner.
think of Main Street, I think of it just plain and simple, besides the event process, as is the liaison and between all the businesses downtown and that their vision and the commission's vision, you know, whereas a lot of I myself might be focused on trying to get feedback from residents. It may be a little easier or different. I'm certainly interested in the business community, but I think Main Street is structured, so to say, to get that feedback in a rapid process. For example, when COVID hit and we discussed closing Osceola, granted Main Street was undergoing some changes, but in a sense, if that was the case in the future, us as the commission should be able to just request that Main Street go out and poll the businesses, say, hey, during this state of emergency, do you want Osceola closed, yes or no? And just as important, they need to be with the seat on the table for Seminole Street, you know, and what's happening there. And the real big thing geographically when we talk about it is City Hall, moving City Hall and kind of looking at South Point here as it goes up to Flagler and what the pulse is of the business community that is benefiting off of, you know, the history of Main Street. We want to keep that wheel moving forward. But I certainly agree with you, Mayor, as far as the path of almost districts. And it would be real beneficial if, you know, the Creek Art and Entertainment District, or if we ever did, if go across US 1 or Main Street did, you know, that may be a Shepherd's Park area district, so to say, that are board members reflective of those districts. The MLK district, you know, if it went that far, would be incredibly helpful for me, you know, someone from each to represent. And then, you know, each of these districts, we have the Creek that already has their own board, but if they had a representative coming to Main Street, you know, to make our job of gathering information as commissioners a little easier. You know, from simple things like the tram or electric scooters, stuff like that, ways that we can pull the business communities. But as Nick was saying, you know, when, you know, a business colleague from the shop next door goes and starts discussing a planned project to them, to other businesses, it's a little more helpful, frankly, than when a city staffer does it, or even a commissioner.
Yeah, I hear that. I guess for me, the idea, I mean, I'm really, like I say, I'm really wanting to focus on leveraging Stewart Main Street as a placemaker and as a business liaison. And I'm not saying let's stop events. The events are important, that's true. But how can we maybe think of new events that can expand the focus outward of this core downtown area and get our more energy down Ocean, down Colorado, because that's, like, to your point, Commissioner, about the infrastructure. It's the infrastructure is one step, but then how do you keep the energy going in that direction? So that's sort of where I'm at with this. I mean, and you know, to be completely honest, if our downtown businesses can't survive without a government-sponsored events program, we have a bigger problem than you know what our priorities are for Main Street. I think I want to really think about the infrastructure. You know, I mean, what can we do to set our businesses up for success, that they don't need this constant maintenance of events to draw people downtown? That's an important thing that we should continue to do. But like, what's the meat of the nut that can get us to have a sustainable future, expanding that downtown? So, you know, again, not to poo-poo the events, they're great, but you know, is there something more that we can do that doesn't require this sort of, I guess what I'm trying to say is, how do we get you for like your financial independence down the road, right? You know?
Yeah, and I want to just kind of, you know, point out, I want to thank the DBA for being a large part of those events, because they volunteer a lot of time, they coordinate a lot of those events. It's what allows them to be viable businesses. When we have, you know, I'll just go back to, let's see. So this was our, you know, event roster from this year, you know, the last essentially 12 months, what we were able to put on. I mean, the Fall Craft Show, Hobgoblins, Fall Sidewalk Sale, Christmas on Main Street, you know, these events don't happen without a lot of participation, a lot of coordination, and a lot of help from the DBA. And, you know, for the sponsorship that the city offers to Stewart Main Street, the return is, you know, substantially more than it would cost to independently go out and, you know, put on each of these events. Some of these make money, some of these lose money. All of them require a ton of time. All of them require a ton of volunteer time. You know, the concept that this event footprint expand, you know, to some of the areas like the Creek and you know, East Stewart and other areas, you know, it's going to require that same buy-in and that same, you know, that same commitment from the people that are actively in those areas. And so Stewart Main Street can be that liaison. Stewart Main Street can be that partner that those DBAs and, you know, those districts can rely on to help them. But it takes a lot of their initiative as well to, you know, be able to, you know, put that on. I mean, some businesses love the craft show. Some businesses hate the craft show.
Right.
So we rely on the DBA to help us, you know, smooth that over and be able to make sure that, you know, the way things are executed is the way that they need to be executed. I can't tell you how many times Rachel's had to change the way a vendor's tape is laid out on the asphalt because it's going to block someone's door. So, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And when you look at what the city is contributing, it's getting a lot of value in return. And as far as events, like if we took events out of the downtown, then yes, the downtown businesses would struggle and they would suffer. So I don't think the concept, and I think I'm interpreting what you're saying the right way and saying that the concept isn't to take events out of downtown, it's to get the city of Stewart out of those events and make it more of a Stewart Main Street and a DBA initiative, not to end all events downtown.
Right, so that we can know that we're also prioritizing expansion and, a focus on not just the core downtown area. I mean, you bring up DBA, one thing I would like to get some clarity on is the relationship and structure of each organization. How do DBA and Stewart Main Street work together? And I know that the DBA used to self-tax through the BID or the DID, and that's no longer happening. So I'm just trying to get a little clarity too on how those two organizations work together and why they're separate. And
so the Downtown Business Association is an association of business owners in the downtown. Bill from the DBA is here, Mark as well. So those businesses all belong to the DBA. Stewart Main Street and the DBA have joint executive committee meetings, and we also have a joint promotion committee meeting, or joint promotion committee. And so that committee is what puts on all of the events. The board of Stewart Main Street and the board of DBA independently vote and say, like, yeah, we want to do this, or no, we don't want to do that. And generally the events are done as a participation through that joint promotion committee. And that's really where the promotion side of Stewart Main Street lives. And, because the majority of events in downtown Stewart have been in this downtown, that's just kind of the nature of that. So, when you start talking about events outside of that downtown area, it starts to kind of change the dynamic of that promotion committee, because the DBA wouldn't itself be, involved in say, a Creek District kind of event.
so that makes sense.
Yeah.
So as Stewart Main Street being sort of a broader downtown Stewart overall agency that is supported directly by the city and by, members and donations and
Organization, not agency, but
organization.
nonetheless.
And then you've got individual, maybe districts isn't the right word, but the DBA, the Creek, if there's another, like again, in East Stewart Main Street or something like that, where those organizations can also provide critical input for you in how you want to hold events or what priorities you have. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Well, and
Otherwise,
again,
because right now it's just Stewart Main Street and DBA, it's almost
nothing
fully
else
overlapped.
there yet.
Right.
I mean, DBA ends at Colorado.
The DDA was kind of created when the city built parking and incurred FEC leases and taxed the downtown businesses a special assessment essentially for improvements to their district where their stores were located. So the DDA was essentially the district that was being charged the special assessment.
Right.
So by the very means that they got an extra line on their tax bill, they were essentially identified as a group. Main Street, as you guys pointed out, was a much broader. You could be in Main Street and not pay the assessment.
Right.
And then, as you point out, the assessment expired, so now it doesn't happen anymore. But it was 20 years of assessments that the DBA paid every year an additional tax to be in it.
Right.
And that's kind of why there's two entities.
And
Because otherwise it is the same.
Mayor, if I could interject some history as well. All the Main Street programs were born out of the Bureau of Historic Preservation. So originally, they were to restore and make sure that the core downtown historic building stock was viable by reinventing them. So it's fine, certainly, to use the Main Street 4-point approach to expand the territory. I just wanted to make sure that it was on record that its original purpose was to restore the historic building stock. So when we did the East Stewart Main Street program, we actually got designated, but it was in a fluke year where there were no applicants. it was a little sketchy because there wasn't a lot of historic building stock to really demonstrate.
Thank you, sir.
And again, to go back to a point that I made, that, you know, our ability to function really relies on the input and the buy-in that we get from the DBA. I mean, that same input and buy-in is required of these other areas. And there was a historic, you know, we had an East Stewart Main Street, and we tried to, you know, be a part of that, and it didn't work in large part due to, you know, community buy-in, and it's tough to get that community buy-in. So where the DBA is, you know, very active and has a lot of, you know, volunteers that, you know, do put in the time and do put in the effort, that's something we can get around and you know, use to really help. You know, we need to see that from other areas.
So I mean, I see some clear deliverables
Right,
that Main
yeah.
Street can give us, and, you know, just quick surveys and stuff like that, where it is one of them, where we can get kind of clean, simple questions answered. Does the DBA, does everything Main Street encompass, do a survey real quick. Vote show, yes or no. Do we support it downtown? Do we not? Does it benefit you? A couple questions on them. And then planning for the future of Stewart, geographical planning of different directionals, and giving us different opinions and planning thoughts with the kind of the experts that are on the board. I think, you know, this has all come about as the future and the relationship between City of Stewart and Main Street. And it's clear, as you pointed out, Mayor, we eventually want to step away, you know, from Main Street and from all the events and have it just financially, you know, independent. You know, in my mind, COVID set that back a little bit, and I can't allow, and we couldn't on our vote, COVID to just, you know, impact Main Street, so to say, to where it might be a crippling blow. But I want to reach that financially independent goal. And I believe that that's the entire point of moving forward with the deal with the Flagler Center. And the next upcoming fiscal year, we should take a step towards that goal, I believe.
So, okay, so we've had some top line discussion. Maybe we can just hone in, like you say, on some of the deliverables, right, so that you guys can have some clear kind of guidance on what we want. I would like to mention the downtown bucks, the Stewart Bucks. That's great. I love that. I got some bucks. So those kind of ideas are nice because they're not necessarily so focused on events, which who knows how long we're going to have to be doing this stuff. What sort of creative ideas can we do to draw some interest in downtown and help directly financially help the downtown businesses? I'd love to see more of that. I'd love to have a couple more ideas kind of like that, or maybe a maintenance of the Downtown Bucks program. The things that you've already presented to us, Commissioner Matheson has mentioned he's on board with it too. I like the idea of focusing on the downtown expansion, the Osceola expansion, and linking. If we could bring that, can we bring that up, that map? How do my colleagues feel about prioritizing this? I mean, we bought the building, we bought Wells Fargo. It's time for us to really start. I think we need to start getting on this yesterday. Yeah, Commissioner?
I think at the same, if we're going to prioritize this, I think we should actually prioritize the entire Flagler Park to make it more of an event space. Because, you know, change some of the trees out, maybe put some more shade trees in, some different pathways. Just modernize that park, because I think it's just a hodgepodge of stuff now.
Okay, well, we'll dive into that, but did you have something too, Commissioner?
No, well, yes, I love the idea of the throughway there of Osceola. I think that's, I mean, for a goal, and I'm sitting here listening, and I think of the children, and I think of all you have done, and then all the businesses. It hasn't been easy for the businesses that come and go. They come and go. And you start, over the last 10 years, it seems like, that you see more of the businesses are staying. And I do, personally, I want this to be the greatest tourist town on the whole east coast of the USA. We can't always have affordable housing. I love seeing, I really do, the condos that are coming up on the river now. The people that want to come here, they want to come here and live here because it's becoming finer and finer. And I get these emails that lately that they've been so negative. You're not doing this right. There's no young people. Well, let me give you an example of, I wanted to write back and say to the lady about, is it Roasted Record?
Yes, ma'am. On
I
Colorado.
love that idea more and more. We're putting businesses in with no parking hardly, but they're successful. We're walking around. I want to see more places, apartments where people can live here. You can take my old place and fix it up. It's not that we're too expensive. There's places around if you want to fix them up. I mean, they're everywhere. People, I think also, I don't know why I'm getting off on this, but they haven't seen 4 stories, and now they're starting to see 4 stories, and it's like, oh my God, they're having heart attacks. We don't have that many, and when they do see it, it's like panic. Anyway, I just wanted to, I love my little downtown, and I wanted to go out East Ocean Boulevard, and I wanted to the bank downtown. Eventually, that property is going to sell too,
That's going to be a big one.
and because the banks are just they don't need all that,
Right.
and that's
right.
going to be a beautiful area also. I don't like people seeing it as so negative. There's so much beauty we can add, especially with that art district, and we all tie in and work together. It takes a lot of time, but I can just, I see the future. I see the goal where I would like the city to go. I might not be here that long, but I would like to be a part of it. And I can't always know what's going on, and you guys do, you know. I like to get that little email that says, well, we're having a little hobgoblin. You want to come? Yeah. You want to bring the grandkids? Yeah.
Well, you're always there.
You know, when we light the tree, whether I'm here or not, yes. The people, for you to have a fine little city, the people demand so much. Well, if we're going to do that, and we have done that, the greatest police department, schools, fire department, and they don't realize how great it is until it's here. And I love mixing the, like Mr. Vitale has done with the old houses.
Right.
We didn't do that. We couldn't do that. He did that, and to encourage him and encourage you all and to encourage everyone to keep doing what you're doing because you love the little place too. But I really believe that we should become just the finest. And there's no reason, and I won't apologize for it, there's no reason for us to apologize for that.
No, we appreciate that, and certainly, you know, I've always championed Stewart as a place that isn't a not in my backyard kind of place. You know, there's a lot of people that are moving here and that, you know, want to appreciate what we have known to appreciate, and there's certainly a way to accommodate them without alienating, you know, what we have. If I could maybe
Can I add one more thing? Because Nick, we can bring that green in if this building is going to go and tear it down, bring that green in and accomplish that. I have commissioners here that like the green, want the green. We'll do the ballpark, Sailfish over there. I'd like to see something else, but when we get there, that could be green too, I guess. But
well, and I think the key to what we've
so we're
discussed
mixing
here.
is what I'm saying. We're not just building just to be building.
Yeah, and we're really championing this project as an infrastructure project,
Right.
to set the boundaries of, you know, where something goes, and then let the future decide what that something is.
Exactly. And let the economy. The little building that's coming back over here, that's an old building. people like to walk up and down. And I like the fact that we take these old buildings and new buildings and we're mixing it up.
Exactly.
So
I appreciate that.
Commissioner, so to that point, I mean, I guess now's the time for us to give a little bit of clarity.
Yeah.
We all want to have this continue to be a priority for Main Street. I'm guessing, and I know this was a while ago that I spoke with you and Mike, but 1, 2, 3, and 4 there. I mean, this is kind of like the idea for a future block development, right? Kind of extending perhaps some retail on the bottom and.
It's a future conversation.
Right.
So
Yes.
this is an infrastructure project.
Right.
We want to take, independent of this conversation, we want to meet with everybody individually and have that feedback digested so that
Right.
y'all can make an educated decision as a commission on which path to take forward and how that path goes forward.
And that's not this workshop, that's.
Okay,
Yeah, we don't have
I was gonna say,
2021.
that's a little down the line. I mean, as Commissioner McDonald brought up Flagler Park and stuff, I'm always gonna be real reluctant to remove any trees, knowing what happened historically. I'm all supportive of adding more trees, but I've spent a lot of time, a decent amount of time talking to vendors at the Green Market, and they like that event as
Right.
an event space, the way it's situated. You know, this would be a big change and something I'm definitely would like to have a workshop on. What are we gonna do infrastructure wise? And then it's almost another question and a whole different animal of this where we're sitting right now when that time comes. But I guess we should keep going down the path of any other deliverables from Main Street. I mean,
Could I make the suggestion that maybe we get a couple, because we've got the board of Stewart Main Street here and some DBA members as well, that maybe we hear from them as it relates to deliverables. I don't want to create a whole nother.
Well, I suppose that's fine. I just, are there any other top of mind that we have here that have not really been touched on yet?
I just wanted to say that little record place is just fantastic. I go in there and all the young people are sitting all around. They've walked there. They've ridden their bikes there. It's just, and the place across the street too. I don't know why I'm doing this with you, Nick, but
No, it's great.
it's just what people need to know this,
It's
you
great.
know?
Well,
Get out and about.
And that's an example of how, projects like infrastructure projects like Colorado, that was completed, 7, 8 years ago. And here we are today, realizing continued benefits of it.
Yeah. It's just so wonderful to be around so many people and what all you all do in our city, the businesses. I mean, the businesses and what you all do is just, you make it work. And I
appreciate
want to
that.
be a part of it if I can help, however I can help.
Thank you. Well, we always appreciate your support and appreciate seeing you out there at Hobgoblins and Christmas on Main Street.
So, Mr. Shaw, do you intend to have somebody come up and just touch briefly on each of these items, or?
No, I just went to this as a potential list for some of your deliverables you were talking about. What I primarily wanted to do was just give the DBA an opportunity to maybe mention deliverables that they could see, being added or part of, their side of this partnership. And then, our board here, I'm not sure if anybody has any questions or anything
Commissioner?
they would like to.
Maybe what we can do is have, certainly I'd be happy to hear from anybody from DBA or Main
Right.
Street Board, but as a way to move forward
Right.
from here is staff has heard from all of us are here, but we can have additional conversations with staff, and maybe they come back, they sit there and then work with Main Street to come back with a deliverables and maybe even a scope of work. Maybe that you might frame it in the form of a scope of work, and come back to us for review and discussion and approval.
Yeah, I think,
So what I've heard so far is just like surveys and some other little ancillary stuff that could actually be covered in the current deliverables.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we need to reopen the deliverables.
Okay.
Unless there are some
Yeah.
DBA
Yeah,
that want to be added on.
Well, our contract, our deliverables service agreement is with Main Street because they're the ones who provide the funds to it.
Right.
So
But given the close working relationship between Main Street and DBA, I mean, I hope you'll just let us know.
Yeah,
If
and,
there's
and,
anything.
and I wanted to just kind of get feedback from DBA here, so that I thought their feedback to y'all would be valuable. They're next door, so they may knock on your door anyway,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Is there anything that,
Yeah, I mean,
here,
you know,
if you wouldn't mind just,
my brain's going a little crazy. I'm Bill Moore.
Bill,
come up
Bill,
with
can
a-
you come and speak into the microphone so it goes on the record?
Thanks, Bill. Come up here.
So I'm Bill Moore, president of Stewart Main Street, also the owner of Kilwins in downtown here. So DBA, my bad, sorry. I wasn't really prepared. But hey, we do work very closely together, like you said, Mike. But so Kilwins is going on, we've been downtown going on 21 years. So, you know, we got here, it was a different town then, you know, a lot of different people. All these are new faces, you know. I have employees from 21 years ago that have 3 or 4 kids now that come back to Kilwins with their families. So it's pretty amazing, right?
I love it.
So I love the town. I'm very proud of what has happened over the past 33 years with Main Street and the 21 that I've been a part of it. It has been great, you know, Commissioner Bruner, and what you said, and to see the energy. And one of the things that I've always been really proud of is, you know, with our organizations and all the effort and all the volunteer hours, because DBA is made up of merchants downtown. We have a membership fee. We have benefited from some of the bid money, which kind of spun off the parking money, which all just gets reinvested in marketing for downtown. And we don't specify streets. We don't specify businesses. We specify downtown, historic downtown Stewart. That's how we market downtown. But, you know, to sit back and watch the way it's grown organically, how it's gone down the Colorado corridor, Osceola, East Ocean, all of that, just the Potsdam area with all the new homes, Seminole Street, condos going up, Azul over here. To me, we're all a little part of that, right? So these people that came 33 years ago, a lot of them are gone now, that started Stewart Main Street. They're not even here, but they put in countless hours of time, but not only that, their own money. They spent literally thousands and thousands of dollars, some of the old timers, to get downtown to where it is, you know, 20 years ago, and then much less today. So I just look at all those efforts from many, many people have made it what it is today. And we're all proud of that. I mean, you know, a lot of the people that are new to the area, they move in and they think it's been this way for 100 years.
right?
It hasn't. You know, 20 years ago, downtown was probably about 60% rented. The rents were much lower, right? Which I remember those good old days, but then the business was much lower. So it's all relevant. But then to see the expansion organically without a big developer coming in here and bulldozing downtown and building a bunch of, you know, very expensive rentals, you know, that's something I haven't been a fan of, and it's been really close. I mean, we had the whole waterfront project probably 18 years ago with the Channing brothers from Palm Beach Gardens. They had a whole plan. Thank goodness that didn't happen. It would have wrecked downtown for what we know it is today. So, you know, our organization works very closely with Stewart Main Street and our Joint Promotions Committee. That's what we do. We promote events. That's what's very important for, you know, bringing people downtown, and bringing those people downtown has grown downtown. It hasn't just grown Osceola or Flagler in that one block corridor. It's grown outside of there, in my opinion. That's what's made it happen. It's also grown the reinvestment in properties and buildings, and which has helped the city of Stewart collect more, you know, tax revenue, and has allowed for, you know, people to get paid a little bit more, and the expansion of the town itself and different things that have come. So, you know, I just feel like, you know, I understand where you're coming from, you know, and one of the things when you were talking earlier, Mike, you know, about just sometimes people do feel like they've been left or forgotten, that have expanded into some of these organic areas that have grown, the creek and even down Osceola, down the East Ocean, is it does take people, right? It takes a lot of volunteers and a lot of effort to make these areas kind of grow and then get connected. And, you know, there's certain limitations. I mean, for me, you know, I'm still trying to run the business, raise some kids, and do all of those things, and then also volunteer for our organization and try to do little things that make it all better. So we're always, and we have gone out there and knocked on doors. We have walked streets and tried to invite people in. And, you know, I'm trying to think, you know, like, how do you make this area more inclusive and make everyone feel, you know, it just takes people coming together more.
Right.
You know, I mean, I love people, you know, that's, you know, my world. I love talking to people. I love ideas. I love everyone's input and then trying to make that work better. And like you're saying earlier, just getting our input for different things that go on in the city, I think we put our minds together and we can really put together some great stuff and keep moving forward and making the town look the way it is. And I mean, I was just thinking, I was talking to my wife last night. I said, the city of Stewart's received so many awards over the last 15 years, you know, from Main Street Awards to the, you know, the different, you know, great American cities. I mean, we're up for one right now for the state of, you know, for the whole state. I mean, there's a reason for that. And it's a community that really loves their town and their downtown and the waterfront. And so, you know, we can't lose sight of that, you know, and I do feel like, you know, I hear some of the numbers being thrown out there and some you know, it just kind of, when you look at the amount of volunteer hours that go into making this downtown what it is over the last 33 years, it's worth millions and millions of dollars.
Mhm.
And so when we do look at some of the numbers, every penny is important. I get it. I run a small business. I understand that. But I think the return on the city's investment over the past so many years of investing in Main Street, the director and helping with some of those fees, has the return has been, you know, tenfold easily.
Sure.
From just a development and money coming into this area and the employment it provides to people in the immediate community. I think it's just been, you know, I don't even know how to put a number on that, but I would say at least tenfold. So with
Thanks,
that,
Bill.
any questions for me?
Nope, that was
Okay.
excellent.
All right.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
So, I'd like to, I mean, you know, it's good having this kumbaya. But I just want to make sure that, you know, we continue to move forward. It sounds like staff's got good clarity from us. You have good clarity from us. And again, you know, I don't mean to be a killjoy. It's not that I don't think that the events aren't important or that, you know, our downtown businesses don't need support. That's absolutely true. Again, it's just that Main Street has proven how successful it can be. It created a downtown that is thriving and vibrant. Now it is, since we're funding it through CRA, we have direct line item funds straight out of our CRA, and our CRA priorities in the past few years have really started to become much more focused on infrastructure. I want Main Street to really focus on that infrastructure, the planning, the plumbing, the guts. And the events are important, you know, but how we just continue to like take that success and expand it outward. That's what we're.
Well, and let me tell you a conversation that I had with Tim Hernandez. You can call him and talk to him. Tim Hernandez, you know, when Azul starts, I don't know the exact structure of their land lease rent, but there will come a time where there's a significant check, whether it be through TIF revenue or land lease rent or combinations of the two. You know, the city will start generating a lot of revenue off of that if they haven't already. The conversation I had with Tim was he was not able to finance that project had it not been for Rock and Riverwalk. He brought his financiers up here on a Sunday, saw what was happening, and when the market didn't give enough information to say what he would be able to rent those units for, he was able to show his investors, I get it.
Right.
So call him, talk to him about that, but those kind of investments that come after the infrastructure is what we're gonna get through promotion, through design, through economic vitality, and through organization.
And I agree. I mean, that's where the events are important because they reach all the residents. It's quality of life. It's like probably everyone in this room agrees that we don't want South Point Peninsula to be developed into a bunch of condos or something like that. The events are quality of life that I can take my family to and enjoy. And so we got to look at the benefit of that as commissioners of beyond just the businesses. They certainly benefit, but when I look at those events, they're for residents. These aren't promoted nationwide. These are locally born and, you know, grown events that are happening here, run by local residents, and that's quality of life.
Sure.
I agree with Commissioner Matheson. A number of years ago, can't remember how many it was, when we approved the Monday night food truck event at Memorial Park.
Mm-hmm.
In the heat of the hottest month of the summer with no shade, in that section where we had the food trucks, how many families came out to that event? and you know, we'd come out and you'd bring your chair or two. I would try to find the one little spot with a little bit of shade underneath one of the trees over by the courthouse, and and then and we'd go around and cherry pick all the different food trucks. And I think that a lot of the events they're important I don't look at them as subsidizing the businesses as much as I look at it as it helps them expand, but more importantly, it provides our residents, not only of the city of Stewart, but greater Martin County, which we are the downtown for, something to do, and people look forward to that. And when we go to fill all the apartments that have been approved, if we don't have events, you know, there's gonna be a lot of people who are gonna say, why do I want to be there? I want to be someplace where there's a green market, where there is a food truck invasion, where there is a arts and crafts show. You can see that by the attendance of the events. So I think that it is important. I think that I think it's possible, in no disrespect, you're underestimating the value of the.
Well, I think what the point is, is it up to the city to run the events? And the
Well, the
answer
city-
I
kind
guess
of
I'm just
is-
saying, like,
But the city doesn't run them. It's
no, I
No,
haven't
but
made
right now,
myself,
we are still subsidizing.
I haven't made myself clear. I don't mean to stop events. I'm just saying, the reason we had this all to begin with, and I questioned the funding and all of that, was that I just wanted more than just the events.
Exactly.
And I know that there was a board turnover, and Main Street was growing, and we're getting into a new relationship with them, with Flagler. All I'm saying is, and I think I'm making myself clear, not to cut off the events.
Okay.
I'm asking for more, and I'm asking for an
No, and I
expanded
agree
vision.
with the more. In fact, my conversations are right on line with what you've
Right.
said with them, and when I've spoken with them. I just was,
Yeah.
just trying to give my thoughts on the events, because I think that they are valuable, just like Commissioner Matheson said, regarding families and things to do, so.
So I do have a couple other questions. I'd like to know how some other main streets generate their funding around the state of Florida, around the country. And I'd also like to discuss the email that Mr. Steinberg sent regarding Sunshine. You know, one option, I mean, I'd like some clarity on that. I mean, not Sunshine. Should we ask our attorney first what his recommendation is, but also the option would be to direct him to get a second opinion from, say, the Jupiter Island attorney, which helped with the right-of-way easement that we dealt with a few months ago.
The opinion's not gonna change. We can tell them if you want, but it's pretty straightforward. If we delegate duties to Main Street and they actually become a decision-making arm or do duties of the city, they will become a sunshine entity. As it currently stands, Main Street does not call me legal advice. We don't put their agendas together. I don't get invited to their meetings to provide advice to them. And therefore, I don't really have an opinion as to whether or not Main Street is a private entity that is subject to sunshine. What I know for sure is that Jolie does not do their books. And so we are not in charge of Main Street by any means. We have a contract to provide a services contract with them and a lease with them, both parallel entities or subjects. One is a lease for a building, the other is a services contract. I emailed you guys at the beginning of the meeting an Attorney General opinion came out titled Open Government Private Organizations. You asked whether St. Petersburg Area Chamber of Commerce is a private entity subject to Florida's open government law. Essentially, is it a Florida Sunshine entity? And the Attorney General said, the mere act of contracting with or receiving public funds from a public agency is not sufficient to subject a private entity to the public records law. However, under certain circumstances, the statute has been held applicable to private entities. There is no single factor which is controlling on the question of when a private corporation, not otherwise connected with government, becomes subject to the Public Records Act. However, the courts have held that the mere act of contracting with a public agency is not dispositive. Again, the receipt of public funds standing alone is not determinative of the organization's status for purposes of Chapter 119 Florida statutes. The courts have relied on two general sets of circumstances in determining when a private entity is acting on behalf of a public agency and must therefore produce its records under Chapter 119. These two tests are briefly outlined below. Additionally, discussions of the test, case law, and relative attorney general opinions can be found, and I have all those. First, delegation test. While the mere act of contracting with a public agency is not sufficient to bring a private entity within the scope of the Public Records Act, there is a difference between a party contracting with a public agency to provide services to the agency and a contracting party which provides services in place of the agency. Stated another way, when a public entity delegates a statutorily authorized function to a private entity, the records generated by the private entity become public records. Accordingly, if a private entity contracts to relieve the public body from the operation of public obligation, such as operating a jail or providing fire protection, the open government laws apply. Totality of factors test. Recognizing the statute provides no clear criteria for determining when a private entity is acting on behalf of a public agency, the Supreme Court adopted a totality of factors test to serve as a guide for evaluating whether a private entity is subject. Accordingly, when a public agency contracts with a private entity to provide goods or services to facilitate the agency or agency's performance of its duties, the courts have considered the totality of the factors in determining whether there's a significant level of involvement by the public agency so as to subject the private entity to Chapter 119. The factors identified by the Supreme Court are the level of public funding, 2, the commingling of funds, 3, whether the activity was conducted on publicly owned property, 4, whether the contracted services are an integral part of the public agency, 5, whether the private entity is performing a governmental function or a function which the public agency otherwise would perform. 6, the extent of the public agency's involvement with regulation of or control over the private entity. 7, whether the private entity was created by the public agency. 8, whether the public agency has a substantial financial interest in the private entity. 9, for whose benefit the private entity is functioning. And it goes on with a long thing, but it gives you those criteria. But to give you an example, the city of Stewart has a contractual relationship with the green market to provide a green market every Saturday, unrelated to Main Street. This is just a separate entity. Are they therefore subject to sunshine? They perform the green market on city property. We schedule when they occur. They wouldn't exist but for our contract with them doing it. And it's a green market that was created by the city for the city and the city to promote the city. However, it's been determined that it isn't because we have not delegated some commission responsibility to the green market, and they're not performing a service or deciding on your behalf in any way. So although we get caught up just because
It seems clear.
they've moved into the Flagler Center, that in and of itself doesn't mean anything.
And they pay us to be in this Flagler Center. They lease it, so.
Right.
Can the letter of Mr. Steinberg be read into the record? Because I have trouble with Zoom, so maybe,
It was.
We read it into
It
the
was.
record.
okay, thank you.
Nick, does the city of Stewart have any authority over your board members and their choices of who's president, who are board members?
No, the city has a board member, which is one member on our board. But that in and of itself, if there weren't 8 more of you, then you wouldn't have the authority. Just to add for the record, I've not known that Robert Steinberg has not reached out to use the Flagler Center since we have occupied the Flagler Center. He has reached out to me and asked questions, and I've consulted with our legal counsel and I answered accordingly. The past regarding Mr. Steinberg with the Lyric Theater and all of that, lays a trail of a little bit of agitation from him. My last email correspondence from Mr. Steinberg started out with, "Hey, bucko." So I'm not going to buy into that agitation and that tactic. I'm always going to defer to our legal counsel, and the city will defer to theirs. And that's the path that he has chosen to act in is an agitator's path. So, more than happy. The Flagler Center doors are open to anybody that would like to use it. We have a great executive director who's done a lot of things to pretty up the place and make it a nice place to accommodate a wide variety of uses. And to my knowledge, Robert Steinberg has not requested that. So in my mind, that it sort of makes this whole discussion an effort and futility for him to grind some old axe.
Thank you, Mr. Schroth. I think for me, the solution really, as far as I can see, is that if somebody wanted key documents, the budget, deliverables, how they, and the city's sign off on those are provided to the city on a regular basis, and in so doing become public record.
We provided them.
So we can provide them. So I think there's a level of oversight there and public access there that's important. Now, does that satisfy any member of the public, whether it be Mr. Steinberg or anybody else who would want, sunshine level access or to be able to have meetings noticed and all of that? I'm not the attorney. Our attorney is giving us a legal opinion, I guess.
It satisfies me. I think
It satisfies me.
Other commissioners.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied, so.
So I think the important thing is to remember that some of those key documents around, say, the financing, especially the budget, that's all provided to the city. And so
We're going down this path to have a nonprofit removed from the city.
right.
That can do the best to provide open access to the Flagler Center for the public, stand up on its own, and benefit city residents and businesses, and benefit us as a commission by us being able to ask one nonprofit group the general opinion of that community.
Did you want to go, Paul?
I don't want to go off track.
No, it's okay.
Good afternoon, commissioners, staff. My name is Rachel Snyder. I have been the events coordinator for Stewart Main Street and the Downtown Business Association for 10 years now. This is my 10th year doing the events downtown. I have seen them come from nothing and grow into what they are today. It has been a community effort. I did just want, again, I don't want to backtrack, but I just wanted to make a few things clear about the events and touch on your point of expanding. We bring 100,000 people a year. That is documented to downtown, specifically through the events that we do through the promotion committee. The promotion committee is made up of some members of the Stewart Main Street board and some members of the Downtown Business Association board. Every year we put in $15,000 from each organization, and we use that $30,000 to put on every single one of the events we do all year in downtown. It is completely self-funded outside of that, and that is the part of what the city is putting towards the events that we do. So there's a very extensive list of deliverables in the service agreement that you have with Main Street, and I just wanted to be clear that $15,000 of our entire budget is what goes into the events for on the Stewart Main Street side. $15,000 from the DBA side is also. So it's $30,000 that brings 100,000 people to downtown every single year. And Mike, with your suggestion of expanding our footprint, I think if we explore other partnerships with other organizations like we have with the DBA, like the Creek District or East Stewart or any other organization that's interested in partnering with the Stewart Main Street, if we can bring 100,000 people to downtown to this district with these two organizations, with what we've done in the last 10 years, I think it's, never ending with what we can do when we partner with other districts outside of just, the DBA or this particular district. So I just wanted to add a little a little more information to what you guys are discussing when it came to events.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, and that's exactly what I'm after. I'd love to share the love, spread the love.
Partner with the creek.
And
All
to
right.
touch further on the budget, the other dollars in that budget go to our executive director, which when the service agreement came to be, prior to that had been Thondra, a city employee who was, getting a city paycheck. Now we have Candace Callahan who gets a Stewart Main Street paycheck, and the rest of the board are volunteers, and those volunteers aren't just downtown business owners. So volunteers all have a general interest in downtown, but our residents, Anthony works for the hospital, Patty works for Seacoast Bank, Paul Nunley has an office in downtown, Mark Breckville has an office in downtown, I have an office in downtown. My company manages a couple of buildings downtown. So it's not this, self-fulfilling prophecy that it's sometimes made out to be. I mean, I don't have to put in all the hours that I put in and my paycheck doesn't change. I don't get paychecks, but at the end of the year, it doesn't change. So it's something that we do because we like downtown, setting up light stands for dancing in the streets, giving out hay rides at Hobgoblin and Fall Fest and, that sort of stuff is something that we do because we genuinely like it and genuinely want to see the downtown succeed.
Thank you, sir. Anything else before we move on?
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you for, yes, oh, sure, yes. Any public comment on Main Street? Thank you, Ms. McBride.
Believe it or not, I was at the original first meeting when they, thank you. But I was,
I love it.
and I was kind of like Troy. I mean, we all knew how downtown Stuart was in those days. And I thought, oh, that's a pie in the sky and that. But look what they did. And they did it, like the gentleman said, they did it with opening their own pocketbooks and that. And I know to this day, I think they had a Stuart Main Street from around the state, down at Flagler, and Ann McMillan and Julie Priest called. They said, Helen, can you volunteer? Sure. Anytime they know, I'll say yes. But I think this is great because, like I said, that was I didn't realize it was 33 years ago, but I'm still young. It's good that you called this meeting because it's young people. I was here, I know, but all these new young people and people moving in and older people, and they're saying, oh, that's my tax dollar. But by having this meeting, I certainly learned a lot more. And this is it. And when I think Commissioner Madison said about having a workshop, you got to keep the public informed. And that's what you're doing today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBride. Good. Do we have anybody on Zoom with a comment?
No, sir.
Okay, well, thank you all again. Really appreciate it. I apologize. I think, can we take a 5-minute break before we move on to item number 2? Yeah. Break right now. Okay, we're back on at 4:44. Thank you all. Had too many cups of coffee today. Okay, so we're going to move on to our item number 2 for D&D, our Sustainability Action Plan. I'll turn it over to Mr. Dias to lead us off.
Yes, sir, thank you. I just wanted to thank staff, and Hogarth and all the rest of the sustainability committee. I think most of them came to be in this room, not all of them. And for all the time and dedication they put into this. COVID kind of stretched it out longer, they couldn't meet and all that sort of stuff. And so when they told me they were ready to present the draft on this, I was really pleased that they were able to get it done, even though that time span had passed. So I just wanted to thank them for the hard effort and hard work they did. This was an extra over and above assignment. They all had their regular duties they still had to perform, but they put a lot of effort into putting this plan together. And again, this is a draft, so your comments that you give on this draft today, they'll be taking notes on that and going back and revisiting it, filtering it, and moving it to the document that you as a commission wish to see for our sustainability plan going into the future. The way that I believe Ellie is going to run this, she's going to go through a PowerPoint presentation where she has getting some visual information, but then she has each of the pillars broken up. And then so I think we should probably stop at each of the pillars and discuss each of the pillars as far as the target area is concerned before moving on and trying to roll it all.
Yes.
Ms. Ellig, thank you.
Thank you. 2,500 years ago is when we began. No, just kidding.
Uh-oh. The earth is not flat.
In ancient Greece, smart people directed their attention to a set of really important questions. Society had structured itself in such a way that these individuals were given the freedom, the leisure, and the luxury to think about certain questions as their profession. Aristotle was in this group of thinkers who gave us insight into what it means for human beings to flourish. So likewise, about a year ago, right here, a group of 10 city employees volunteered for a committee to think about the long-term thriving for the city of Stuart. So this sustainable action plan that you have before you and that you will see on the screen outlined shortly is the result of this collaboration. Why have a sustainability action plan? There's many good reasons. We've summarized them here, but mainly the lifestyle that we enjoy right now as City of Stuart residents and businesses, we want to see that continue for the future. In addition, in providing that high quality of life, we want to better protect our environment and our natural resources. We want to eliminate pollution while easing consumption and using of those resources. We want to look at possible future vulnerability areas and impacts from climate change. We want to reduce the dependency on those sources of energy that would be used up, while at the same time expanding the use of renewable energies. And for example, today, I wish I had put in something more to do with wind. I mean, we were looking at solar energy power, but the wind energy power certainly would propel a lot of windmills out there. And then we want to, lastly but not least, provide an economically sensitive economic growth strategy. This plan has 7 focus areas, and underneath those areas, we have 22 goals that would support those areas. In addition to underlying the goals, which is really the target of this plan, we have many actions, I believe 61 actions that are very practical. You become a builder by building. So if we want to be sustainable, we must act sustainable. The first target area that we're going to talk about is climate resiliency. It's probably the most difficult area, but it's an area that probably is the weightiest. So we're going to tackle that one first. We have some accomplishments already in looking at resiliency for our city. In 2019, the city first adopted a resolution in support of the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. And again, the city adopted a resolution in that same year in support of the House bill. And this bill was instrumental because for the first time in a long time, it actually looked at assisting Florida as a state in understanding, assessing, predicting, and responding to the effects of climate change. And then most recently, the city proclaimed 2020 as the year of climate action. Now, there are other things that the city has accomplished. So in each of these, I don't intend to really call out every single accomplishment. I'm trying to just really hit the high note. So if you see something missing that you think was really important, we can certainly, introduce that into the plan as well. For climate resiliency, we talked about 3 specific goals. The targets that you see would certainly be ways to measure the success of those goals. However, they are not absolutely the be-all and end-all or only targets that we could consider when we evaluate whether we've actually met those specific goals. So please keep that in mind. Those were just targets. We need something as a unit of measure. And we decided that those targets were very well suited in support of the goals. The first goal, mitigating human-driven causes of climate change, could best be measured, we felt, by a complete greenhouse gas emission study for city operations. This should be undertaken sooner rather than later. And so we've called out a goal of 2023, or excuse me, a target date of 2023 in which to probably have this done. Ideally, it would be done probably with an outside group. I don't know the extent of the study. It's pretty extensive, but the EPA does publish a guideline for a municipality to conduct such a greenhouse study. So we could look at that for an example. And then a second target underneath that goal would be to join as a party to a regional climate compact group. And that could be something as something already in progress like the South Florida Compact, or perhaps trying to initiate a compact here on the Treasure Coast. The second goal we call out is to adapt to future conditions. You will find this goal in some form or fashion pretty much under every pillar. It is a very important goal to consider in several topics. With regards to climate resiliency, we want to develop our own vulnerability mitigation plan by 2023. We have access to such a plan that was developed for Martin County. They have shared the results with us. They have shared mapping with us. And they also have shared in a pretty lengthy spreadsheet with the deliverables from their grant that they obtained to do this study that is broken down by departments and how the county could attack that, what to look at first. So we could follow their plan similarly, but it would be much needed to be unpacked probably at a department by department level to make that meaningful for the city of Stuart, where we would not have to do or replicate that same vulnerability plan ourselves. And then the third goal is to lessen the heat impacts on the community. There are many ways that we could do that, but one way or target way that we called out was to adopt a green roof ordinance. And that would be including sustainability features to maximize the benefits of underutilized roof space. Here in the downtown area, most roofs are flat in nature and they are just concrete. So looking forward to a green roof would mean perhaps adding some vegetation or reflective surfaces or solar, or even a blue roof, which would include cooling and storing rainwater. So there's a lot of different means that we could capture that just concrete space right now and contribute to reducing the heat impact in our community. So I'm going to stop there. If you have any questions or comments on the goals, specific targets, we don't go into any of the actions that would be suggested. Those are in the plan. that would support those goals, but, we can talk about any of those if you wish.
Thank you, Ms. Ellig. Commissioner McDonald?
Yeah, actually, I like a lot of the stuff in here. Do we have any idea on the cost of the green emission study? I mean, just so we can plan on budgeting for something like that?
I do not have a cost estimate of what it would cost for like a consultant to do. The study itself and how to do one is actually published on the EPA's website for municipalities to follow. So in essence, if a staff member did it, there would not be a cost other than staff time, but it does require some level of expertise in that area. I would say scientific expertise. So I'm not sure the level of, the staff's knowledge base in order to do it in-house.
Maybe we could find out another municipality of similar size that's done one.
Okay.
And see what it costs.
Sure.
I think the other thing, the green roof initiative.
Yes.
Which I'm still wrapping my head around a lot of this, but and there's parts of it I really like, parts not that I don't like. I just don't want to, I'm just worried, I want to be careful that we don't enact an ordinance, especially for residential, that prices people out of fixing their roofs, especially if they're older housing stock. So I think that's something that we should just take into consideration and maybe have a phased in approach over a longer period of time. So that's all I have on this section.
An ordinance may be too strong a term. A lot of these may be a standard operating procedure or ideas or alternatives or incentives where it doesn't necessarily have to, follow an ordinance per se.
Thanks, Ms. Ellig, and I'll jump in on a couple of those things. I agree with you, Commissioner. Ordinance might be too spooky of a word. Incentive programs could be a good way to try to tackle this. Maybe something where, like we saw with the new proposed public works complex, where we make a commitment that when we do municipal builds or renovations, that we would try to incorporate some element.
Right, well, we used to, and it's gone away for a couple different reasons as staff has been filling me in, but we used to have the energy efficiency ordinance and that provided rebates. And one of the rebates was if you put a certain type of roof on. I actually had done my roof right before, but I took advantage, which was I put a tin roof on because it provides better cooling.
Right.
Haven't really noticed it.
Right.
But it does, so that was an incentive that we used to have that we don't have now. Oh, and so maybe we need to look at, go back and revisit how different types of incentives and that we can do for promoting that type of upgrade, but.
I agree with you.
Certainly.
I think incentives are a good way to start. Maybe looking at ordinances or, like I say, us leading the charge where we can, and then having some incentive programs for residential, and then maybe discussing are there target roofs on commercial properties that we could help with, or that we could have an incentive program. As far as the study,
Yes.
there are dozens of firms out there. I've interfaced with a number of them that this is their bread and butter, this is what they do, and many of them write grants to fund the entire thing and their work. There's incredible amounts of grant funding out there for
this. If we get a
this.
grant, let's go for it.
I think, I mean, for a lot, so that's generally where I'm going to go with this. A lot of, especially around the climate resiliency studies, energy. I mean, virtually all of our pillars. There's a lot of grant funding out there for that. So I think it's important for us as we go down this path to not be afraid to start talking about budgeting some of these items, whether they're incentives, or start maybe talking about staffing this department. I mean, we all want to take this very seriously, and budgeting is an important way to take it seriously. But as far as the studies, to Ms. Ellig's point, we don't have the level of expertise on staff to do that. So
it's
a
a
lot of
very
them can be
scientific-
easily funded through grants.
Well,
And
that's great, but even if it's not funded, we do need to pay for it. We need to budget for it.
yes,
And so the only other thing I would say on that is, and I've got a couple, but I did not, in my notes, I did not put that down for this one. But I do have a couple other ones where we have some aggressive timelines, and we just may look at the timeline so that, and that may be with a little bit of research to find out what is the grant cycle, what is the value cost, and then adjust the timeline to associate so it can be more realistic within what our financial means are. So.
sure.
Absolutely. Okay.
Any other additions on this?
As far as the climate compact, I know that we had spoken with local Treasure Coast region about it. Is there any ever progress on that?
Yeah, we've discussed that.
Yeah, I have been pushing for the formation of a Treasure Coast compact. I don't have a lot of support locally, and I can continue to push on it. I will, but especially now with COVID, I mean, there's focus is elsewhere. Unfortunately, because this is a problem that we can't wait. I mean, every second longer we wait, we are totally screwing ourselves.
Mhm.
But I think I have looked into us joining the South Florida Regional Climate Compact. The only issue there, and it's not a non-starter, the only issue there is that years ago as it was forming, Martin County specifically decided not to go into it. And those counties and municipalities south of us have done so much work over the last 12 years to really get things going. And they've spent lots of money and they've become a global leader in this. For us to come later, I have heard from some people it could be seen as, it's like a little bit of a slap in the face, but I think that's still something that we could consider. And I think maybe with Martin County's vulnerability assessment that they've undertaken and our partners and our work alongside of them, I think that might be another opportunity for us to reach out to contacts of Martin County and say, is this something that we want to join in on? Another reason why it would make sense for us, it could make sense for us to join the South Florida Regional Climate Compact is because even though we're technically in the Treasure Coast local government section, the Regional Planning Council that we sit under spans south. So and they are an organizing member of the Climate Compact, so we could kind of go in on that side. But anyway, I can look into those options a little more and brief the commission on that if that's something that we're interested in.
Excellent.
I'm interested. I mean,
There's no downside.
There's no
yeah,
downside.
elections come and go, stuff changes. We're not Martin County, so to say. I mean, we're City of Stewart.
And Ms. Alec, the one thing I'd add to this too, I think in looking at a greenhouse gas emission study for our operations and for our buildings especially,
Yes.
as part of that, there in the last climate compact summit that I went to, I saw a really interesting presentation by an outfit. I can't remember what level of government they were in the DC area.
Yes.
And they undertook a mostly grant-funded project where they looked at all of their built environment, not just their own municipal buildings, but the local commercial buildings and residential apartment buildings. And they had an energy assessment to see what are the biggest targets, the lowest hanging fruit, and to see where they could kind of have more energy efficiency improvements for buildings, for the
Yes.
built environment. Maybe something like that could go into what, like a tool that could not only look at our operations, but what buildings in the city are the biggest polluters, and are there ways that we could help incentivize some?
Right, okay. We do have that recommendation later on when we get to the energy chapter,
Gotcha.
but I know that several times things will overlap
Right.
with pillars, but no, that's definitely something to consider.
We
Commissioner?
actually used to have a program, and I can't remember what, CPR, I think is what we called it. And this was this is when we were in the heart of the recession. We were still in a recession, and commercial properties were really suffering. And we were trying to help get commercial properties that were sitting vacant, get get the owners to help them move those properties and get new people into. And so we had, I can't remember exactly what the acronym CPR stood for, but we would, commercial property review, I think is what it was. And we would actually go in with fire and building inspector and go over and look at the zoning and work with the owners if they were to help them evaluate their property to find out what the uses are, what the, how they can see it. So there could be something like that done as well for energy efficiency. And when we get, and I actually have some thoughts, some notes and some stuff later, but just the only reason I'm bringing that up now is just to kind of tag on to what you were talking about.
Okay. We'll touch on it down the road too, but again, since the pillars kind of overlap,
Yes.
the idea of us mitigating the causes of climate change, little old Stuart, is I understand, and I think the right tack for us is to continue to advocate for policy positions that directly address it, like we have done, supporting resolutions, supporting a policy at the state and federal level, a mission study for us to do better, joining a compact. One other thing that we could do is to, as far as the businesses go in the commercial environment, we have a global wind turbine company that has a US headquarters in the city of Stuart. And so I think maybe we could work with some of those sorts of companies and, see if there are other ways that we can kind of promote green industry here, even though we're largely a marine industry. What other sort of green energy industries could we court and try to bring to Stuart that would not only increase our economic base, but also contribute to that mitigation effort?
Well, in marine, aerospace, wind turbine, there's a lot of crossover in the technology and in the manufacturing techniques. The wind turbines, the propellers are just big fiberglass shells. So it's which is just, they're made very similar to how they make a boat hull. So just really big.
Yes.
Anybody else for this pillar? All right, Ms. Ellie?
Okay. Pillar 2, natural resources accomplishments. We just celebrated the infrastructure, the septic to sewer conversion. We have recently created a river advocate position within the city. We had the construction of the first and largest PFC pretreatment facility within Florida. We adopted and extended the seasonal fertilizer prohibition ordinance. We've received 3 times the Florida Rural Water Association's Best Taste in Drinking Water. We're identified as the Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation. For natural resources, we have 4 goals. The first being maintain and improve air and water quality. And we are looking to meet that by increasing tree canopy coverage by 1 tree per parcel citywide. We want to enhance green space utilization. Often we don't even know where our residents aren't aware of where our green spaces may be hiding. There are a lot of pocket parks, there are dog parks, there are active and passive parks. So developing maybe a guide that would shed some light on those. Reducing consumption of potable water. By 2025, we want to reduce per capita usage to around 160 gallons per day per person. Right now, we have reduced that within the last 10 years from 218. We're in the neighborhood of around 170. So that's a very doable goal. So we want to keep working on that. Additionally, we want to increase Aquahawk registrations to 25% of all utility customers. When customers know how much water they're using, they can guide their own usage and costs before they get their usage bill. So putting them in charge of their own bills and information would greatly enhance, I believe, their ability to conserve water. And then lastly, retrofitting municipal facilities, ensuring that all of our own public facilities are converted to water efficient technologies. And that may be phasing in things like we have done with the water fountains. We want to ensure, taking an older water fountain, putting a newer fountain in so that safe drinking water is available, that's filtered, but that still tastes great because we have that award. But also running toilets. We should not find any running toilets within the city of Stuart. We should be using water efficient toilets, maybe hand or motion sensor faucets. So incorporating those technologies throughout our buildings as well. Natural resources, any comments on those?
Yes,
Couple
Commissioner.
of things. Gotta get my glasses out here. On the accomplishments page,
Yes.
there's a couple I'd actually like to was to consider adding. I think some of the biggest accomplishments on page 11. We talk about the watershed study, and the watershed study, which was done by several engineers around 2000. I think it was around year 2000. And that led to numerous watershed projects. Probably the most notable one is the Heart of Haney Creek, which was the purchase of 53 acres. That was slated to be a Costco at one time. So we saved in 2011, the city in partnership with Martin County, he saved 53 acres. And then in 2017, we completed a wetland restoration. Plus removing lots of exotics, and so that was one of the best water quality projects we did. Another one that virtually nobody knows about. I know Mr. Mortel certainly knows about it because it's right by his house. Over Amerigo and Osceola, when Osceola would flood, which it did every time we got a good rain, there was pumps that pumped the water right into the St. Lucie River. The hospital had bought several lots along Amerigo years before to create a buffer, and in partnership with the hospital, in a public-private partnership, we turned that into a stormwater treatment. If you go over there, there's Mike, is it too big? They're big ditches.
It starts actually all the way up at Osceola.
Near the hospital.
Yeah.
All the way to Riverside Drive
Right.
along Amerigo, so it's one big.
I thought it had some pipes that went under
It's got pipes that come out of
weird.
here and then
Right.
Riverside on both sides, so it's 2 full blocks long, but it runs on Amerigo technically, like.
Right, and so that was water being pumped right, stormwater being pumped right from the street. And then there's, of course, all the Heart of Haney Creek projects that were done years before, where the dog park is now up north of the bridge. There's the 2 Poppleton Creek projects, the not so sexy airport ditch project. So I think it would be really good to incorporate probably a couple of the more notable
Absolutely.
water treatment projects that were done, because these were things that city leaders in the early 2000s put most of these projects, together. Mr. Mortel was on the commission.
There was a Apple Box program and dredging of the canals, and I think it was Kruger Creek, at the very top of Kruger Creek near Joe Capra's house by 10th Street. When they took the water samples before they started the project, there was 0 oxygen in the water, and they didn't even have microscopic activity. And in the year anniversary after the project, they took pictures of manatees there.
Wow.
It was kind of
Yeah.
that's a big change.
That was a big change. I was just seeing Bruner Pond was another one right over by ground floor or whatever, it's collapsed now. So there's all of these watershed projects that were implemented, were planned in around 2000, 2001, and then implemented over the next 20 years. And I believe that the city spent in excess of $20 million on these projects. So I think that'd be really good to incorporate those into the accomplishments.
Absolutely. And I do, that was an oversight on our part. I do have from Milton Leggett 3 pages of every one of those projects that you talked about,
Oh.
an inclusive list. So we will definitely pick out the highlights, and, all of them are really important, but we'll include definitely some of those
Now,
with the maps.
going through on page 13, I'm just going to hear the reduced water consumption by 2025. I think that is very doable.
Yes.
In fact, I don't know if we still have it anymore, because I got to the point where I probably don't even notice.
The sign?
The sign, Dave, do we still have the
We
sign?
do. I
We
was
do.
just about to ask about that.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I don't, I've been driving past it so long, it's one of those things, it's kind of blended into my.
Yes.
It could use a new paint job.
I'm thinking, well, I do have new graphics for it, but I really was thinking about relocating it maybe a little closer to City Hall, just to provide new interest, because it's just part of the landscape over there by the three
Digital
monkeys.
billboards, every so often as part of one of our campaigns.
Mhm.
And I don't know, used to be, if you were a new water customer, you got a little kit that had like an aerated shower head and some other stuff. I don't know.
Yes, we still do those. Those are little goodie bags for all of our new sign-up
Okay.
customers.
It's been a long time since I was a new city water resident customer. The Aqua Hawk, the goal
Yes.
of 25%, I actually would like to see us raise that to 50%. I have Aqua Hawk, and I can tell you that if you have a toilet that runs, you will get, and it's running all day long. I'll get 12 messages before I get home from Aqua Hawk.
So you have a toilet that runs.
Not right now. But I've had that in the past.
Yeah.
But I think that the AquaHawk is good. Now, I think one of the challenges for us is we do multifamily. We put in master meters for
Right.
and some of the condos like Villa Bella, for example, and there's a few others, they have a master meter, and then they use an outside company for the condo association, or the developer does an outside billing company. Which if we wouldn't have had to deal with a problem 10 years ago, I never would have ever known that was an issue. But it is that's something we do, but it is something that we do, and it's a common practice. We don't want to be reading 450 meters.
Right.
So, but from a education point of view, so for example, like we use our utility bills to promote our water conservation. All these folks that we're putting in the multifamily over the next few years, we're going to miss all of those from a perspective of that utility bill.
Right.
So first, and then how do we use AquaHawk technology? I don't think there's a way we really can get to, we don't want to send out text messages and phone calls to every member of a 450 apartment building because because 20 people had their toilets running.
Well, that might be something that a computer program could correlate their company.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Let it speak with ours, so it's broken down. And if we could talk to, the HOA and then the company they use, they might be able to get the
on the
language
condos where
to communicate.
on the condos where they have individual billing for the water, that's possible. But like my office, my personal office that I just sold, but my wife still has one in there, which is over in Central Parkway, water and sewer is included. There is no individual meters. With the apartment complexes, I would guess like a Zool doesn't have, they just, water and sewer is just included with their rent. And that's the way most rentals are. So, so I think that if we want to reduce water consumption amongst people in multifamily, we need to look for innovative ways to reach them in order to hit that goal. Plus, when you're in an apartment and you are not paying a monthly water bill, you're not
Can't really hit them.
Well, yeah, you're less likely to be as concerned about it because you don't. Yeah, there's some people that care. You just don't even think about it. Then finally, on the water reduction of potable water is expanded use of the IQ water system. And there may be and probably a cost benefit analysis of cost benefit analysis of bringing it in and allow an X for in certain neighborhoods that where there would potentially be a use by the residents to tap into it for their irrigation versus using wells or using their potable water.
Right.
Not every neighborhood's going to do that, but there is some, maybe there's, maybe a targeted approach. Again, I don't know the cost. It might be cost prohibitive to run those mains. But and he's got 2 months to figure it out.
Now I got 3.
Oh, 3.
It's already figured out.
Oh, okay, well, perfect. As far as I love the idea of the trees, and Jim Karofsky will be very happy to know I planted a coconut tree this weekend in my backyard.
Who planted it?
I did.
Oh.
I actually grew it from a coconut. It's about this tall. So.
Well, Dave had something to say.
I did, as it relates to the reclaimed water system, or the IQ system. A part of that would be, as soon as we're done with the expansion of the RO facility, once that system gets in place, then the plan really was to look at the feasibility of putting IQ water in those areas that use lots of water for land, for irrigation, specifically along the river.
Yeah.
And that's where the cost benefit analysis works. Doesn't work if you've got a well and you're using it to irrigate.
Right.
It works when you're using potable water to irrigate your lawn because you don't want the concrete walls on your house to turn orange or brown.
Right.
Yeah, so there's a plan.
So that's perfect. And then this last 2 things, and I'm sorry, there's a lot. You guys have been working on this for a while, and I'm trying to throw myself into it.
I'm happy to dig in.
Yeah, so on the water, what is the status of, I believe, wasn't Willoughby Golf Club supposed to hook up to our IQ water, Dave?
Sorry, do I have to go back to the microphone?
Yes, please. Because
Why don't you pull up a chair next to it?
That was open not to.
Yes, sir. They're about to connect now.
Okay.
They've done their internal piping. It's been a long time, but I think it was a week ago that was about done, and I believe that our billing, our customer service department is biting at the bullet to send them a bill.
Yeah, because I think they use like almost 1 million gallons a day. Maybe 750,000.
You know, they may be using that out of their ponds and that, but ours is 100,000 take or pay. So whether they use it or not, they're going to pay for 100,000 gallons a day. Martin County has a similar agreement with them, and I think theirs is 375,000 gallons a day, take or pay. So, but that supplements what they're using out of their lakes.
Out of their wells, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's, and the reason I brought that up is these agreements with like Willoughby, even though they're not in the city, they're a user, which will then help fund and keep the utility going, and which will allow us to continue to make improvements because we've, that the IQ water system dramatically reduced the amount of potable water that was being used. That was a big jump just by doing that, and that's.
I think people kind of overlook it, don't hear it. And when David Peters says take or pay, the incentive is built in because they have to create ways to use all of the water because they have to pay us for it. Even if they use 50% of it, they're paying us 100% every day for the use.
Mm-hmm.
So it incentivizes them to use the maximum
Only that
amount
water.
to reduce the other uses because they have to pay the rate to us. Like you said, it's take or pay,
yeah.
regardless.
And then
Which is a good incentive.
the last thing was, it mentions the oyster recycling program, which we created in 2014, 2015.
Yes.
How's that? What's the status of that? Are the restaurants still participating?
Some, it depends on their menu, but most of them that are longtime participants, and there's not a lot outside in the county. And the ones that were participating, like the Oyster Bar Spotos next to us.
That was our best contributor.
Yes, they were. They really were. Some of them have moved down to Port Salerno. The district table, for one, is down there. We have the Riverwalk right here. That restaurant participates. Mulligan's, it depends if they have a seasonal special or not. It comes on and off. There are a few restaurants.
The one on
But
Indian
they do. They
Yeah.
are always looking for volunteers and, you know, to not just collect, because the FOS really runs the collection program, but also to help bag and then deploy the bagged oysters. So
That was a good partnership that we have with FOS on that, and I'm just very happy. You know, I worked really hard. Actually, that was one of the things that was one of my pet projects, and so it's one of those. That's why I was kind of curious to how it was going. So I think that is the only other note I have here is the retrofit of the public. Or ensure all public facilities are converted to energy efficient technologies.
yes.
Only thing I don't know what the year would be, but just wondering if 2025 is too aggressive just from a budgeting standpoint. So
Could be. I mean, we
And
can
so-
certainly look at
and that's
those dates.
what I want. If we're gonna do all the effort and put this together, I don't want to put a plan that's setting us up to fail.
Right.
Has anybody ever seen the strategic plan we did in 2013? Did you know we did a strategic plan in 2013? The plan was, it's sitting on a shelf, not really being used. And if you want something like this to be successful, one of the things I believe that you should do is put in realistic goals that can be accomplished versus trying to be too aggressive and then say, well, we can't do it, so we just won't.
Right.
So
That's
all I have on that section. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah, I have a few follow-ups on that and a couple questions, but does anybody else want to jump in? Commissioner Matheson?
So natural resource and water quality, the city's done a lot of great stuff in the past. But when I look at our watersheds, I see just a lot of potential that still could be there. Haney Creek, Heart of Hayden Creek is great. And I'd like to see that, go into Bruner Pond or some of the other water retention areas we have on MLK, basically. But especially Bruner Pond, I'd like that to be considered the enhancement of that, because it flows right into Fraser Creek. And right now, it's a water retention area that could have a lot more purification capabilities if it was designed with a little more littoral planting, maybe a few more weirs or plantings in the weirs, kind of cater it to mimic a wetland a little bit more. And that would also, be aesthetically pleasing, but that specifically, since it flows directly into Haney Creek. But when I go around the city of Stuart, I love what has been done, but in my mind, that doesn't mean we should stop. We should continue to progress in those areas. Martin County's been being a leader in this all around the county with different projects, and I think we can work with them a little more at turning our water storage areas and trying to make them more like natural wetlands.
So Commissioner, if you don't mind, maybe, so we should suggest adding an additional goal, because number 5, I was right there with you when I was looking at 5 as sort of utilizing them in a more like biofunctional way. But this, I like the idea of having its own, let's get more people to enjoy our parks and to really utilize them and know that they're even there. Maybe an additional goal is finding critical water retention areas and turn them into more water cleaning features.
Exactly. So
That could be added as an action, supporting the goal without being a goal itself. It could be a way to accomplish our goal of improving water quality, and really enhancing our green space utilization with the purification. But, so we could add that in as a goal, excuse me, as an action.
Almost redundant. I mean, this is discussed later on in some of our other focus points. The other one was to go off of, the oyster revitalization project. I know I've dragged some staff to meetings with Orca to create living shorelines. And the discussion is to do that off Riverwalk, off the boardwalk there. And to have Orca involved, just like FOS has been, to go beyond just oyster with natural live rock. And then, of course, there might be some discrepancies, but I would be supportive of, mangroves or other plants in the living shorelines, and then using that highlighted right off downtown Stewart to help spread that to other property owners where they might want it. I know you brought it up at the last meeting, and I was hesitant, mostly from a legal perspective, if we can impose, conditionalize a living shoreline requirement on a property owner and applicant where it's not necessarily their property, but us working as much as we can with living shoreline areas, especially starting, in highly visible locations that other residents might see and want to work with, where, we facilitate the connection, say with Orca or FOS on that.
I support that addition to as a target
I like that.
on
idea.
public waterways.
Yeah, I think that's
a great idea.
perfectly.
And there's grant funding out there for those sorts of projects.
Orca already had some grant funding, which.
Well, and I'm on the IRL
Yeah.
board, so we can get some grant funding there.
We have living shorelines in conjunction with the built environment.
Yeah.
And so do you feel like you want to move it to more of the natural resources?
Well, I didn't know where I know it's talked about twice, and it's kind of even redundant in my notes, but,
Okay.
I don't frankly care which focus point it's evolved in, natural resources or built environment, as long as there's some specific action items that we're looking to pursue.
Okay.
Commissioner, do you have anything to add? Okay, so as far as
No, it's all great. Good
Yeah.
ideas.
I want to keep talking about the IQ water as well. And I know that this upcoming legislative session, the new Senate president will likely be Simpson from Pinellas County area. His big push is going to be water. It's always water, but he's really going to push for sustainable water reuse projects. All the indicators out there is that this is going to be a terrible budget year for any funding of local projects. But if there's any chance of getting funding, it's going to be for that kind of stuff. So I think the expansion of our reuse water, finding ways to, I know it's expensive to us, but if we're not selling it, it's just going down into our wells. How could we look at either the costs for it or incentivizing more use of that water? And thinking creatively, this might sound weird, and I know there's a public perception problem we have to overcome. Everyone talks about it. That's going to probably be a big thing at the legislature. But I'm thinking of Waters Car Wash. I love my new car wash across the street from my house. And Waters Car Wash. It's great. I mean, car washes, nobody's drinking that water, but wouldn't that be a great way to use up some of that reused water?
You're going to have to be the one to sell it, to use that.
Car washes actually don't, each time you wash your car, they have a giant tank and they actually filter their own water.
And they're reusing a lot of it.
Or else they would go broke. But I don't know exactly how much.
It's like going to a haunted house.
But I'm basically thinking,
Yeah,
what sort of,
We can certainly look at a reuse feasibility study. It's been done in the past here.
Right.
As it relates to the most bang for your buck, that can be included in this, I think.
Right.
rather easily. It's not something that's going to be done in, 6 months. It'll take a couple of years to get that done,
Sure.
budgeting and all of that, but that can be put in the plan.
I mean, that's really our main, not only is that reducing our consumption of potable water, but I mean, that's like sustainability, resiliency 101. I mean, we're reusing our wastewater. And, I don't think it's a far stretch to say within the next 20 years that the technology is going to be there, the public perception is going to be there, that we're going to be drinking that reused water. I mean,
If you would talk to your city engineer, he would agree with you today.
so
There's plenty,
So what
other municipalities are doing.
yeah, exactly. Our city manager, his great idol, is manager of a city that has a full. I mean, it's a world-renowned water reuse project, and they're drinking it.
They do it on the space station.
Yeah. So the main cost, I'm sure, is probably the plumbing.
Oh, it is. There's a little bit of technology in the middle of that mess, but yeah.
Absolutely. So I don't know. I think focusing on realistic deadlines, sure. But what can we do to continue to expand the reused water?
We can do two things. We can push the water management district to mandate it on large projects like golf courses.
Right.
Mandate it, not give them an option, mandate it. And the other thing to do is a reuse feasibility study where the people who use most water, and irrigation is our highest user in the city of Stewart. That's what people use water. I mean, drinking water. If we eliminated that, we'd be down to the 125 gallons per day.
And thank you for that, because that was my next point. I really appreciate the discussion around, I'm in a condo where I don't pay a water bill, it's through my HOA fee. And based on the presentations that we've been given by Ann and Dave about water use, the consumption of our potable water, I mean, we can try to get people to put aerators and faucet fixtures and toilet reducers. The lowest hanging fruit is landscape irrigation and sprinklers. And so if we can cut that over, we won't have to worry about trying to find ways to get to each apartment in a condo and give them but I do hear what you're saying about.
No, but you're absolutely right, though. The irrigation, that's why the expansion of the IQ water to your, well, probably your commercial, but also, like Dave said, to your river, to Mike's house and other Riverside Drive homes and over in St. Lucie Estates off of Martin Avenue between East Ocean and the river. Those areas are higher end homes that are they're using drinking water for their irrigation because they don't want the stains. I'm trying to make my yard I don't want to fix my sprinkler system that's busted.
Right.
And so I'm trying to redo my yard. My front yard
seems.
What's that?
Where you don't need irrigation?
I don't need irrigation, and I can finally paint my house for the last time and never have a rust stain again.
Hey, we have a program for that. The lawn buyback program.
Yeah, so, but it is, but getting all of that to, getting it where we're completely free of irrigation is a bit of a challenge.
Right.
But putting that said, your commercial businesses, our car dealerships along US 1 and our, big property owners, they're going to want the plush green because they're trying to attract people in and look pretty. And so the IQ water is the way to really do that. And thanks to Dave and everybody in Public Works, successful implementation of the sewer, septic to sewer, we have plenty of product to sell.
Right. So I guess kind of what I want to really focus in on is that, it's an expensive proposition to be running all new pipes throughout the city, but anything that we've done, the sewer was an expensive proposition. Talking about in the early 2000s, Haney Creek, all those great park projects and restoring our water retention areas to be flow-through marshes, those are all so expensive and they require maintenance. It's just about saying, systems design, right? We have a system right now where we're pumping water out of the ground. It's costing us a lot of money to get a new alternative water supply. We plumb it through our toilets, we're irrigating lawns with it, and then we have all of this waste product that we don't know what to do with.
So we
inject it into the ground, and then on the other side, we're still continuing to put potable water, it's designed so backwards. And so, if we're talking about not only eventually saving money to the taxpayers, it might be an expensive thing to kind of take on, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's more elegant systems design, and it will achieve all of our natural resources goals by reducing potable water use, reusing the waste product that we create. And anyway, so
it's the challenge of converting an older community. Think about to newer technology when everything's under the ground, under infrastructure. Think about it, how they do it in a big city like New York or something, where you have this concrete building jungle that has everything goes 3 floors down as well as 90 floors up. I mean, it's a challenge, but fortunately, we've been very successful here. It's a piecemeal for sure, but it's something that is being successful, and unfortunately here in Stewart, it's going to have to continue to be somewhat of this piecemeal versus a place like they're building out in Palm City, Pineland Prairie, where they're going to just build a state-of-the-art facility and be done with it.
Right. Well, and then the last question I had for Ann was for the potable water. What is that 160 gallons per day? Is that benchmark based on any, are we trying to be in line with a generally accepted benchmark for water use?
The state average was 150. We always have remained a little bit higher than that because the average household here is lower than the state average, but we would continually like to save water. So since we are currently in the neighborhood of 170, we thought by increasing it or reducing the consumption to 160, it was an obtainable goal, and we can certainly provide education and training to get residents' usage down. So the reclaimed water additional uses would certainly complement that.
Okay.
Can you give me a little more information on the dredging that occurred in Kruger Creek? Was that just Kruger Creek, Fraser Creek, Poppleton?
We did Poppleton, Fraser, and Kruger with grant money, and then we put a lot of the fill ended up actually out of the where it would turn into what was a golf course out of the landfill. Then on top of that, we also the city also dredged the canal between North and South Carolina. That was really close to 2005 or so, I think it was, maybe before that. But that was where the residents of that canal agreed to be a special assessment.
Yeah.
They all paid it, the city did it. Fraser, Poppleton, and Kruger were water treatment programs that also was when the city added baffle boxes to all of the outlets. And the Poppleton Creek, where Bruner Park is, was actually called Trailer Town, and in 2001 the city bought Trailer Town for $800,000 from the Fenneman Trust, and the Fenneman sold it, and then the city went to the DEP and got a CDBG grant, and or I'm sorry, a FERDAP grant, and used the money to dredge and create the the drainage area. It was just a narrow creek all the way through there. Literally carved that whole thing out, put that aerated fountain and the bridge over it, and the whole thing was actually built as part of the drainage basin for that area as part of it.
Have we been testing any of those watersheds since that occurred? Just basic stuff, dissolved oxygen or?
Yeah, I mean, they have that. I don't know the last time we tested the water at Bruder Pond, but I know that's what I was talking about. The dissolved oxygen was what the test was before we did the dredgings. And then I also know.
Is this an ongoing thing?
I don't know the last one.
It is an ongoing sampling event. It occurs when there's
sorry.
over the weirs. I'm sorry. You're right.
So what?
Here,
I mean,
just
this is.
I really didn't want
And then he mentioned that
This
too.
is Ann's party, not mine.
We need to get your steps up for the day.
If you look closely at Bruner Pond, it actually has a system of weirs,
Oh.
and that water would have otherwise been tidal, but it's not because it's regulated just to the west of there by the weir system.
Yep.
For the intention.
And if we would have put the weirs 100 feet the other direction, we wouldn't have had to do a referendum to lease or sell that property.
As a part of our permitting process, we do take water samples at discharge points. We do that quite frequently. I can't tell you how frequently, but I do know that Milton's group does that. It's a part of our BMAP plan.
Right.
So it'd be just below, Fraser Creek side of the weirs or above it, say, if we're talking about.
Discharge side.
Discharge site for.
Discharge side, downstream of the weir.
Downstream of the
Yeah.
weirs at River Pond.
Yeah, that at discharge, and that gives you an idea of what kind of water quality improvements you see over a period of time.
That's something that Dave just reminded me. One of the other things to look at for our accomplishments is 2013, we signed the BMAP, and it was a 15-year program to develop, to remove a certain amount of load of nitrogen and phosphate. And what did we have that done in 3 years from there?
You know, I was on the other side when that happened. I don't
By
know.
the way,
But Sam was
did
certainly,
we did beat the goal by
Yeah.
like 2 years.
And I think we beat the goal by like 140%. So it was one of the it was pretty impressive that, and this was again, going back to all that pre-planning that had been done, going back to 2000.
a part of the upcoming stormwater master plan, planning document that we're going to be doing next year will include some of these improvements to some of the stormwater detention areas. So that hasn't been lost.
Thank you, sir. All right, shall we move on to pillar 3?
Yeah.
Okay. Renewable energy. So some of our accomplishments, the FPL solar canopy at Kiwanis Park is part of the Solar Now program. The handheld device solar charging, and that should be stationed. There's one currently now down by Duffy's Restaurant. The electric vehicle charging infrastructure collaboration with Tesla at Kiwanis Park. The streetlight replacement to LED through the FPL program. And then an energy use audit was conducted for the city offices back in 2010 to ensure that energy saving measures were initiated. And that inspection passed, and they did implement several conversions as the result of that study. For goals, we want to reduce the electricity that is consumed by the city, at least 10% with electricity use. We also want to encourage the reduction of electricity consumed in the community. And the wording of this target is not necessarily the best, but we want to develop a guide and citywide performance standards. For example, standards to shoot for energy savings, ways to improve, not just in the city buildings again, since that 10 years, there's a lot of changes that have occurred in energy audits, but develop that and be able to share that with the community. And as you, Commissioner McDonald, had noted, maybe especially with the commercial properties, so we would make that guidebook available, residential, commercial, maybe even industrial, depending on what the performance standards came out to be. And then identify financial opportunities for the private investment and maybe converting to and going to some of these alternative energy solutions. And then lastly, this 10th goal was to increase electricity sourced from clean renewables. The city wants to be designated as a Soul Smart City. We are currently working on that. And that designation would be at the bronze level, and we want to improve it to silver. There's a few more things that need to be done, and it's pretty easy to move from bronze to silver, but getting the initial certification to bronze, we're waiting on just a few things. One of them being is an adjustment to the land development code to include some verbiage. So Michelle Judd is here. She can explain further exactly what that is.
Hi, Ms. Jett.
Hi. So currently, the land development code only mentions solar, and it says that it requires a public meeting for approval for solar structures in the urban district, and that's pretty much it. And when it comes to the planning, zoning, and development section of the Soul Smart certification, there are specific things that they want to touch on in the land development code in order to be certified. And some of those include just making clear guidance for the installation of solar in historical properties, including qualifiable metrics. They also want information on permitting for the small ground-mounted solar systems. And they also would like something that states the use of solar is allowed by right in all major zones. And currently, we don't have anything like that. And then there's also one that would like zoning ordinances established for clear regulatory pathways for primary use. And that's about it. And it's not all of those, it's just some of those that would get us there. So it's not all 10 of those things, it's just maybe 1 or 2.
So Ms. Jett, have you or Ms. Ellig shared that list? I mean, you're working on Soul Smart designation with Development Department?
Yes.
Okay, so it's in process.
Yes, it is.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner?
Got a few things on this section.
Yeah, and you know what, I might recommend, I do appreciate your additions to the our accomplishments, and I don't want to forget those, but I mean, if there are some really, really important ones, maybe add them or mention them, and then if not, I'm totally fine with you after the fact.
Oh, yeah, and I've got and actually, now that we're through the water,
okay,
that's for the most part, though I do have, there's some things in here that do have touch on a historical sense, but let's see, where are we at here? I love the idea of the Tesla stuff. I don't really understand it yet, but as far as how it works, but the Tesla solar panels, my hosts understand they're very good. The one thing on this is that identify financial opportunities for private investment, alternative energy solutions. The only thing I'd say on that is that's good, but I want to make sure that we don't run afoul of our franchise agreement with Florida Power and Light, as that is one of our major funding revenue sources. So it's something that's whatever we do with solar energy, and we probably should try to do it in conjunction with them versus doing something that could be considered in contradiction to that. On the one of the things that we talked about, the energy audit of the city.
Yes.
You know, we did at least have a partnership with the Solar Energy Loan Fund, and that's a great program because one of the things that we used to do is fund energy audits. I can't remember if it was 50 or 100 a year for residential homes. I had one done back in 2013, and we determined that I should put a tin roof on my house. We should put a different thermostat in, blown in insulation. There was a lot of different things. We ended up, one of the things they suggested we come around, they actually went around my whole house. We paid to have my whole house sealed up with caulking around every place that air could possibly get out. They also suggested all new windows. Fortunately, at the time, I couldn't afford all new windows, but I do have them now. So those are the energy audits. At the time, we paid for those out of our building fund. And if that is still allowed for them to come out of our building fund, you know, to really get with Solar Energy Loan Fund, maybe, you know, reinvigorate that partnership, because not only will they conduct the energy audits for us, but then they will finance the energy improvements for the residents. And they have pretty favorable financing, especially for people that are struggling with credit issues and so forth. So those are one of the things that we should really, is a way to really help people, especially in the older homes, upgrade their homes. Because they'll finance windows, energy efficient windows, roofs, air conditioners, and blown-in insulation. And what they try to do is they come and do the energy audit. They recommend everything that needs to be done, and then they figure out what they can get you financed for
Right.
based on what you can afford. So it's a great program, and that would be with them. And there's also programs, what is it called? PACE, I believe.
PACE, yeah.
PACE program. Those are great programs as well for doing, and if I remember correctly, is the PACE program the one that goes on their tax bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I think we put an ordinance in several years ago that would allow us to do that.
Yeah, there was an issue with the Martin County tax collector was required to follow some regulation. We adopted the ordinance, but the Martin County tax collector never did, or the county, or whatever it was. I believe last year or the year before, the tax collector finally did take up the process.
Okay, so that's something that we can maybe utilize then.
FP&L also does those assessments
Do they?
for free.
Okay, let's see, I'm just looking at,
Stephen, are you aware of, we used to do those, right, over in the building department? Do you know why they were stopped or, yeah? Okay.
and I'm just learning about the Soul Smart delegate. I think that's very good. I don't know much about it yet, just what I read here. But I think getting those types of designations are good. There was one other thing that I missed. So performance, encourage developers to use green building practices and standards. And I think this is one, I think there is a overlap on, but one of the standards is for LEED certification. And LEED loves when people build LEED buildings because LEED makes a lot of money off of it. One of the things that to think about is putting in the standards that are LEED, but not calling it LEED, because you can add a considerable. I think I understand that Children's Services Council built a LEED building. Their LEED certification just to have it inspect the stuff for the certification added over $100,000 to the building. So we can do things that put code in that accomplishes the goal, but doesn't
Without
use
having the name LEED.
without using the word LEED. And then with the car chargers on this one, the solar
Transportation.
that's transfer. Okay, I'll cover that later. So, anyways, that's all I have. So.
Well, the car chargers were in the accomplishments, but yeah. I think there's
And then
more.
car chargers, I like the car chargers. I think we should have more. The only thing I'd like to see on the car chargers, and again, this is probably an overlap, is there technology out where the people charging their car have to pay for the electricity?
Yeah, there is.
Okay, because I think if we're gonna put a network in, we should be, I have a gasoline car. I don't get my gas for free. I think that if you have an electric car, you can get your electricity for free.
Right.
And so I think that, especially since we'll be paying for that infrastructure, so.
Commissioner?
Well, for me, moving forward, I mean, we've already discussed it, but the new potential public works addition or the garage, really, as Commissioner McDonald touched on, FP&L has a franchise here. So where I see a lot of renewable energy possibilities within the city are our own buildings, and having, the goal of our own fleet being electric vehicles that is charged by our own solar infrastructure at our own buildings, and I see a lot of potential with that with the Wells Fargo property. If we were to store some city cars there, it would be charged, overnight or throughout the day there. And any additions we want to do need to contemplate solar in basically all city properties where it's feasible to do that. And then the next step in my mind would be branching out to make those available to the public for a fee. But the first priority would be trying to highlight solar as much as possible so that we're not paying for the cost of that energy once the infrastructure is paid for. Everything else has been said for, as far as renewable energy, I mean, Ann touched on it earlier. Wind on top of solar could be highlighted, and some incentives in that aspect, with highlighting certain locations.
It says 2023. Would you do that when the gas vehicles, the next one that gets old, you need to replace it?
Oh, we'll talk about that in transportation.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But you mean the 10% reduction in electricity by 2023?
No, I thought he was talking about the vehicles.
Gotcha. My only things here are, I'm glad you brought up Self and Pace. I had Doug Coward in right after I got elected, and we're currently have an agreement with Self. And then we had Pace come back in after that was cleared up with the tax collector. So we are currently
That's what I
open to both of them, but it could I think we could benefit from having some messaging or some marketing around that.
Me and Doug conducted 3 or 4 public workshops for Self right here, 10th Street, and someplace else here in the city.
Yeah.
Back several years, back in 2014, 2015.
I can tell you the problem that Terry O'Neill, who was kind of running the program from the development director perspective, the problem he ran into was that it's essentially a mortgage or a loan.
Right.
And you have to qualify the same way you have to qualify for any loan. And so what he was running into is that anybody that could qualify for the PACE loan could qualify for refinancing of their own loan or the loan of their own house. And then it was a matter of literally negotiating or the competitive nature of the interest rate. And the PACE rate was actually higher than some of the local bank rates. So that just simply was an economic decision.
That's what I found from my meetings with Doug, is that why not just go to a bank and finance?
I can actually tell you, because I used a Self loan, and at the particular time at the end, for me, it was at the end of the recession. I needed to do $20,000 worth of work to my house, so I did a Self loan. The interest rate was slightly higher than what the current mortgage rate was, but there was no closing costs.
Right.
There was no mortgage on that. There was no, there was no recorded mortgage. There was no points. It was actually, at the end of the day, the numbers worked out a little bit better than if I would have went and got a second mortgage for $20,000. So
it also, I mean, obviously it's how you qualify and what your credit is.
Right.
So, there's a lot of people that.
And they don't, and the other thing is they don't put a lien on your home. It's not a mortgage. So they take the risk that if you default, they don't take your house. So, and if you're homestead, you're not going to lose your home to that note, like as if it was a mortgage.
Right.
So it doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for some people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and when you're trying to, so again, it's a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
It's not the end all be all for
Right.
sure, but it does work for people, and it, but there is, but it does work. It worked for me, and I know at the time, back in like 2015, I think they did, I remember Doug telling me they had done like 75 or 80 loans in the city of Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't putting that much effort into the city at the time. They were putting some effort because Martin County didn't want to partner up with them. And so they were focusing on the city. So they didn't have like a full-time person down here in Martin County as like they did in St. Lucie County. They had a couple full-time people out there pushing it. So.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Pollution and waste reduction. We've accomplished a lot in this particular segment already. We implemented going from dual stream to single stream recycling. We had the adoption of recently 2 landmark I would call them, ordinances regulating the distribution of plastic straws, and also creating regulations for polystyrene and plastics on city-owned property and rights-of-ways. We recently, last year, introduced a 95-gallon brown yard cart for not just the convenience of our residents, but also for servicing. So those have proven to be pretty popular and pretty advantageous on both sides. We also implemented programs to collect and recycle plastic bags to eliminate the contamination in the curbside program. And again, we have a similar program in the downtown area to get the cigarette butts out off the street, out of our waterway, and those can be recycled through TerraCycle, earning $1 contribution per pound to the Keep America Beautiful Corporation. And then we champion local waterway cleanups. For example, this past weekend, the International Coastal Cleanup. So the city is always a sponsor of those, and we also have a bi-monthly local neighborhood cleanup program that produces not just goodwill, but a lot of TLC in the individual neighborhoods, and the residents truly can get rid of some hazardous waste and e-waste that they might otherwise be inconvenienced to dispose of and hide that in their normal household garbage. We are looking to have 3 goals. We want to reduce plastic pollution, and we want to achieve total compliance of those ordinances that we passed. We were looking to reduce the amount of waste produced, and as an initiative that we want to undertake here in the city is to really move towards a paperless environment. COVID helped us with that, where we started using the digital documents a lot more frequently, and I think we've become accustomed to doing so. And then also we want to increase waste diversion, reduce the contamination of recycled items to no more than 10% of our total cart content, and that's the recycle cart. At this point, we are hovering probably around 20% contamination in our recycling. So your feedback on these goals.
Thank you, Ms. Ellig.
Seeing none, moving on.
Okay.
I know you want to get out of here, but.
Are we nailing these or
We're more
what?
than happy, you are nailing it, Ms. Ellig.
I don't have anything on this.
I agree broadly with the goals. I really want to focus on increased waste diversion, and maybe an action or a target there could be, have staff come back with some ideas to implement that reduction in contamination.
Mm-hmm.
I was just on I sent you some information, but I was just on a presentation by the Florida Recycling Alliance executive director, whomever it is. And there's a lot of push towards that really central messaging around when in doubt, throw it out. Clear, easy, simple graphics that maybe we could think about putting on our cans again, that just say, we only want this, this, and this, and then everything else gets thrown away. Keep the education really simple, and then have staff also maybe bring up refocus on commercial recycling if
Yes.
possible.
Okay.
Can I have clarification on a sentence in this?
Sure.
I think the 6th or 7th paragraph down, it says the city contracts for waste removal from the city's canals and waterways, removing hundreds of pounds of litter weekly. Are we, I know we've done our waterway cleanups and stuff like that, but how accurate is that? Are we collecting hundreds of pounds of trash from Kruger Creek, Fraser Creek, and Poplin Creek on a weekly basis?
No.
Cool. I was annually. That's what I want to hear, because that would.
For the record, Mr. Peters confirmed that it was on an annual basis, not on a
That-
weekly basis.
You know, or else I'd be talking to Mr. Tuminelli maybe on that one.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Let the record reflect that Vice Mayor Clark has joined us.
But for waste reduction on this one, my biggest goal I'd like to see is, you know, adopting commercial recycling, a system where we can do that. I know that's come up and Mr. Peters has been brainstorming with his team on that one. But a clear way where we can at least broaden our recycling into the commercial realm where it's still not contaminated, where you can pinpoint, you know, who's using what, maybe, but.
Interesting you bring that up. And Ann's goals and objectives that she hasn't seen for 2021 is to develop a pilot study downtown to focus on recycling and spread it from there.
Perfect.
So that is in the program. It's a pilot project because it's too massive to take on at one time and you'll get frustrated. So we're going to do a little bit at a time.
Perfect.
Is copy paper recyclable, like that type of paper?
Yes.
Yeah, is that, my business I had for 21 years, we had a tremendous amount of paper waste. And we had no recycling program that was available to us at our office complex. And I remember trying to get our HOA, and it was a challenge for a couple of reasons. One, I think, was right down to the dumpster enclosure. If I remember, that was an issue because there's room for a dumpster for all the waste.
Right.
And then the other thing was, you know, I don't know what happens to the wasters when shredding companies come in and shred the stuff. I'm not sure if they take it with them and
They
then
recycle it.
you know, do they recycle
They do
it?
recycle.
Okay, because I know there's at least one paper shredding company that comes into that's actually based in the city. They're right on Central Parkway.
They come in here.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So, and I think that would be good. But I would have loved, because I used to literally pitch, you know, probably 4 cases of paper a month.
Wow.
You know, because my business, we printed up, we were in a business of delivering documents, and if any document did not get delivered for some reason, it went right in the trash. And so it's just tons and tons and tons of paper that we threw away.
One of the challenges with commercial recycling is the dreaded dumpster enclosure, in that you'll have to expand those enclosures to accept, if indeed they have enough waste for another dumpster just for recycling. That's why we have the blue card program.
Well, but the one idea was that, you know, we're not increasing the volume of waste. They've already been throwing it all away. So the idea is if you've got a dumpster enclosure that's 20 feet long and your dumpster is 16 feet long, maybe you only need an 10-foot dumpster and a 6-foot recycling because the volume of waste isn't increasing, you're just sorting it. But you are the professional.
Now, the paradigm shift is go bigger on recycling, smaller on trash, force them to recycle.
There you go. So let's look for some staff feedback
As
on
long
that.
as there's proper compliance and we don't have contamination.
And
That's what
that's, and the contamination in the commercial side is going to be a challenge because employees are just going to do what is the path of least resistance.
Well, we look forward to Ann's concept for the pilot program.
All right.
Stay tuned. And I just want to clarify, shredded paper is recyclable, but you must brown bag that. You cannot just throw loose shredding into a recycle cart. It gums up and gets stuck along the conveyor belt at the MRF. So you certainly can put it in there, but it does need to be bagged. Not plastic bagged either, paper bagged.
Thank you.
Are you advertising that a lot then?
Don't do it.
It is on our do's and don'ts list that's found on top of the recycle cart, but we can certainly call it out in, you know, in social media and postings when we work with people.
One last thing, sorry.
That's okay.
I wonder if we could add maybe under increased waste diversion, we could look at bringing back some ideas around composting, whether as simple as trying to maybe put out like, look at some local private industry that is going to do it. They have them in other places. They might not here, but where it might be feasible for us to promote, if not make a roadmap for beginning to handle ourselves some sort of composting. I think that's an important missing target here.
Are you talking about at the residential level or commercial or food composting at commercial restaurant downtown? Or?
At residential level, at
Okay.
commercial level. I know.
So people would bring their items
I like
there
him
for
so
public
much.
composting?
No, that's a great idea, and we actually have a plan to offer home composting kits to residents. In addition, we have a grinding operation at the Old City landfill that could be easily converted to a composting facility.
Dave, wasn't there a company that wanted to come in and do composting a number of years ago?
He's mad at me for that.
Okay.
Do what?
Wasn't there a company, I was talking.
There was.
Yeah,
There
and I
was.
thought we were like moving forward, and then there was a problem, something to do with Martin County.
If it sounds too good to be true, it typically is.
Yeah.
And that, in that particular case, it was.
Okay, I just remember, I couldn't remember the exact deal, but
They had executed a contract with Martin County that has since expired and terminated. It wasn't going to work for us, but they tried, and it was a good composting plan, only on a much larger scale than what we'd be looking at the city landfill.
Right. Okay, thank you. I'd just like to see that added.
Okay.
I think the composting at city landfill would be
Well, this is a
great.
good meeting, Mike. This is very good. Very good.
The built environment accomplishments. We just recently updated the year of the comp plans while incorporating elements of sustainability. We have a new electric vehicle charging station ordinance that would go into effect for, I believe it's commercial developments larger than 50 units that would require charging stations. We have energy efficient construction incentives. And then the FPL program began switching out the light fixtures for the poles that they own. That was phase 1, and that was completed. We would like to, for goals, promote green building, adopting a citywide standard for green buildings. We'd like to reduce light pollution, adopting a new light pollution regulatory standard, and adapt the built environment to future conditions. Again, it's that adaptability element throughout really most of all of these pillars. We want to review and amend the land development code with adaptive measures by 2025.
Thanks, Ms. Ellig. Well, there you go, Commissioner McDonald. Your the statewide standard for green buildings. I think that could be a good place where the principles of the lead could be
Right, they can
sort
be
of
implemented.
outlined.
And I think the other one, the light pollution.
You won't have to ask your question every time anymore.
What's that? I know, but Eula knows my question for years under PUD.
The LED.
Was about the LED lights and the light pollution. I would love to be able to look up and see the night sky. And so, and as much as I'd love to just adopt a standard, what I learned from over the last 10 years is that technology's been changing so fast in lighting that it's hard to develop a standard that you just isn't getting leapfrogged by the actual technology. Right. So, and that's actually a good thing, because 10 years ago, we couldn't get anybody they would say, well, we'll consider putting LED lights in. Yeah, they were putting fluorescent, or those sodium lights. Yeah. They were even worse. And I got sold on this when I saw a picture of Melbourne, Australia, where they're in the process of a changeover to LED lights in their city. And there was this one street, they had one done one side and not the other. And all you saw with the LED lights was minimal light, photons going right where it was supposed to go, and the bleed from the other lights, the old lights. So I'm a big fan of reducing light pollution, and anything we can do. I just want to make sure that we are able to keep up with the technology changes, so we don't get leapfrogged.
Okay, understood.
Any other comments on built environment?
My notes is similar with living shorelines and bioswales, because that was touched on in this discussion, written discussion as well. But and then besides, and I'd heard the same thing you had, Commissioner McDonald, with the lead building, that you're at the end of the day, you might be paying a premium for that certification, but then the Florida Green Building Coalition, I don't know enough about, but I looked up the application fees to become a member, if we were for the city of Stewart, seemed minimal. But that's something that we can certainly consider if there's a real benefit to it, but it was reasonable, like $350 annually for us to become a member, but you know, that could be considered. Other than that, you know, again, bioswales.
Right. Rain gardens.
Yeah.
Just a question, Anna, is are the adaptive measures going to be informed by the vulnerability assessment from the county?
They could be implemented by that. I mean, you know, certainly we could have like an adaptation action area where we would prioritize and include, you know, encourage like the relocation of building, maybe from flood or disaster prone areas. We could create something like that.
Yeah, I would just say that we should, you know, when you come back with those measures, those draft measures, that they should be largely informed by that study.
Okay.
Because they'll have already done all the work. Well,
right.
You know.
And also the other thing is that just looking at, again, the dates to make sure that they're realistically accomplishable on the dates as far as adoption and effective dates and so forth.
Okay.
All right.
Very good.
Transportation. The city commissioned a downtown electric powered tram service using state grants and city capital investment. And then recently we have purchased numerous hybrid staff vehicles that were used for administrative or inspections. What we intend to do for our goals, we have 3 in this area. We want to reduce energy use and cost. We take a look at converting vehicles in the city fleet to hybrid or electric vehicles at scheduled replacement times. We would like to adopt a procurement policy with the right sizing of vehicle fleet within the next few years. And then also offer a modified work week to employees within 6 months, reducing the amount of miles that employees drive to and from work. We'd like to create safe, affordable mobility and a transportation network. We need to conduct a complete streets assessment. And with that, the following goal: to improve infrastructure, to adapt to growing innovation and need. We could look at adopting the conceptual plan of that complete streets assessment, and then adding more electric vehicle charging infrastructure to the public rights of way. So again, that could be by charge if that technology is available, or converting the charging stations that would be used to charge the city-owned vehicles or city-leased vehicles, and converting those to possible use by the public. There is technology too out there that has plug-in stations for street lights, where a street light you would pull up maybe in the downtown and you could plug in at that point as well. So I don't know what the challenge would be, maybe of if those are metered, if they would be paying for those, or if that would be on our dime. But again, that could be a positive way to get residents in the downtown area too.
Thanks, Ms. Ellie. Yeah, Vice Mayor.
Good.
With regard to item number 19, or particularly 11, Mr. Peters, looking towards having City Hall at the Wells Fargo Bank location, and with Memorial Park being there, and of course the school and teachers and so on in that area. do we have the type of infrastructure that we could put the vehicle charging station or some other thing so that when people either come to City Hall or congregate in the parks, that more and more people may be using those little cars, the smart cars or something, or just an electric car? Do we
That's
have
what-
that along East Ocean Boulevard, or
As a-
it's not our right of way, it's our road now, it's not a county road, is it? It's the
East
local part,
Ocean.
the local part is ours, okay.
That technology will certainly be looked at as we move into Wells Fargo, as we convert some of our fleet from a gas engine to electric. Those charging stations would be installed for the city of Stewart use only. That's a part of this transportation plan.
We have, Dave here and I have been talking about the entire EV charging stations throughout the city and spot locations other than just the park. So that has been contemplated and is in discussions. And then we've also talked about the city adaptations to the city charging vehicles in our future location and proper placing of that, all that stuff. So it is, those discussions are already occurring.
That's exciting to hear.
They've even gone so far,
Very
get a
exciting.
list of cars that are available for purchase. In our next fiscal year.
Well, my question around that was, I know we had gone through the leasing program for our vehicle, for our fleet.
Yeah. It's actually not a lease, it's a financing program, so we own after the 5th year.
Okay,
But we have this, we do an equitable look at the 4th and 5th year. So they say, okay, this, whatever vehicle, X vehicle, we'll give you $10,000 if you trade that vehicle in now towards the purchase of your next vehicle, rather than keeping it for 10 years and the wheels falling off of it.
Nice.
So at the 4th and 5th year mark, we examine the trade and equitability on the vehicle for a new vehicle. Everyone calls it a lease because it's enterprise, but it's really a financing program.
okay. Well, yeah, I'm definitely in favor of moving over towards hybrid EV, focusing on EV where appropriate.
And is Enterprise already offering EV, and in the future, they're going to be offering, one would think, more and more EV options. So I know I mentioned to you, Mr. Dyers, about the complete street study that the MPO and Treasure Coast Regional Planning. So at least 3, the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council, working with the MPO, there's 3 streets in the city of Stewart that have already been studied as far as complete streets. So, you know, those could be highlighted and looked at by staff. You know,
So that assessment has been completed already by
yeah.
you? Okay.
They've polled some of the public on those areas, so there's a lot of background data they've
Do you know what
taken.
streets they are?
Palm City Road.
Palm City Road, Palm Beach Road, I believe.
Monterey.
I think it's Monterey.
Monterey.
Let's see. Palm City Road, Union Street, Monterey Road, Palm Beach Road.
Palm Beach,
That time on Christie Way.
Monterey.
Golden Gate and so on.
Something south. it's in
And
that
then
street.
Martin County's been kind of working with, for East Ocean.
Well,
I just want to make sure we use that data and, you know,
It's prioritizing, and it's not that we're going to redo the work that the MPO's already done. We were there at that presentation. It was a great presentation. It's prioritizing.
Right.
And then working with the MPO to get it funded.
perfect.
Yes, Commissioner?
Okay, a couple of things on this one. EV vehicles, I think EV hybrid vehicles are great. I think as we do our normal rotation through vehicles, that's the time to do that. I love Complete Streets, been to several conferences over the years. Complete Streets is the way to go. It's really a forward-looking way. One of the, of course, I mentioned earlier about the electric EV charging. I think one of the best things we can do if we want to reduce, traffic is better public transportation. Now the MPO does do the planning, transportation planning, but Unfortunately, Martin County Commission does the implementation and funding. And Marty, I don't know what the numbers are, maybe Commissioner Matheson does, of how many trips they do a year. A couple of years ago, it was 150,000 trips a year. Indian River County, which is a similar county as far as population, actually less, they do about 1.6 million trips a year. It would be very advantageous if we can figure out how to convince the county to adopt an aggressive public transportation plan, such as Indian River County. It wasn't that long ago that Martin County was just using plain white buses and not even branded buses, because they don't want to, the county commissioners have never really wanted a public transportation
I couldn't
system.
agree more.
I mean,
I raised it at this morning's MPO meeting that
it's
there's a lot of improvement room.
There's lots of
When are we
improvement.
meeting with the county and the school board?
October,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just,
There's a
just
lot of
came to
room.
my mind.
There's about 1,000% room for improvement. There's no reason we don't have a robust public transportation system in Martin County, except for the county commissioners don't want one. And in fact, a former county commissioner that is no longer in office, lost her reelection a few years back, said at an MPO meeting, she didn't believe a single person rode her bicycle to work in Martin County in the month of July. And then MPO employee Bonnie Landry raised her hand and said, I ride my bicycle to work 4 days a week.
Wow.
Right.
And she didn't believe her. But
I do it 100% of the time if I'm providing my own transportation.
Well, that's a great point, Commissioner. Yeah, maybe we can find ways to.
Push them, and I don't know how we're going to do it, but then just the last thing, the 4-day work week, the modified work week. I agreed that it would reduce miles driven by employees. I'm not a fan of it, and I would not want to go that direction from a customer service point of view to the city residents. And an example, with a 4 10-hour day, there's 1 day a week that somebody's not there. It inevitably, when the resident is the only day the resident can show up, that's the day that that person's not there, and that's the only person that can help them. And we are here for the public, and so I think that there may be some departments that can do it, but I've just never been a fan of the 4-day work week from a customer service perspective. And so I think that we should tread lightly on that one, but everything else is fine. So
Well, I don't know if I agree. Maybe 410 is a bit aggressive, especially within 6 months, but maybe we can look at targeted departments where there's no customer service facing, element. Maybe that might.
I know IT, for example, I talked to Dave about this morning, but, development, the Public Works Department, anybody that has regular contact with the public.
Right.
I think to me it's a mistake. And unfortunately, COVID has exacerbated not that we have a lot of customer service problems, but any customer service problem that any organization has had has been exacerbated. Where we used to have doors that were unlocked, now they're open. They're locked. And where it used to be, you never needed an appointment to see somebody. Now you need an appointment. So you add just that one more layer of difficulty for
Right.
the average person that just needs to get something done at City Hall. And we have such great access, we forget how frustrating it can be from someone who doesn't know the system and doesn't know where to go and who to talk to. So.
Right. Yeah, I think staff can maybe self-identify certain departments. Mr. Dias can probably give us some good recommendations on that, where 410s might work, or some work from home, some virtual element a
Which
couple
we're
days a week.
doing right now.
Right.
Some of it.
And maintaining that.
how, I mean, in my mind, first we'd remove police and fire from this, right? And sanitation.
And the city attorney.
It's a scheduling.
Exactly.
plan.
That's,
Right now, fire doesn't work before it anymore.
well, I know. So we're not even talking about them out of, we're
No.
taking 270 employees and subtracting a decent amount that can't be molded into a 4-10 work week. But I see if I could see a possibility where the schedule could be created. So City Hall is still open. You know, for example, in development, does Tom Reeds and Stephen Mayer both need to be there Monday through Friday? Or
Alternate
could,
schedules.
well, they alternate, can I finish? And then, you know, Stephen is there Monday and Tom is there Friday, and then they're overlapping Tuesday through Thursday.
Right.
And that, I see this as also a potential benefit from someone who gets off at 5 o'clock that may be able to come in at 6. I mean, in my mind, this boils down to city manager, you know, seeing if this is feasible with certain staff members to be able to be done.
Yeah.
But the environmental benefits, I see and realize why this is in the report.
And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. No, I think that, but like you said, is use Tom and Steve, for example. If Steve is the one working on your project and the only day and you're a citizen and you're the only day that he can come in is the day he's not there. And it adds just that additional layer of challenge for the resident. That's what I'm getting at is we're there for the residents and we need to remember that why we're here. And it's, and yeah, there is an environmental benefit, but we also have to remember we have a duty to accomplish the goals of running the city and resolving the issues that the residents have. And if you get it, and we've all had the emails of a very frustrated resident and I can't tell you how many times where I got a call from somebody who's just frustrated, they just needed to be walked through the system.
Right.
And and if you just add that extra layer, and then you add, like I said, especially now we're in the world of COVID, we're in the world of locked doors, we're in the world of only appointments only, people working from home and then you start adding all those things together. Now you're not responding to our one customer, which is the resident. So the residents are primary focus. So that's where I'm getting at. I'm not denying there's an environmental benefit, but there's also, with everything, there's puts and takes.
Yes, absolutely. So maybe we'll just have I think I'd like to just hear from staff to say there might be certain departments where it's more feasible than others, and then maybe there's somewhere we could do more work from home and that persist into the future.
Well, I think it really scheduling falls into my purview as long as I change your policy to being open 5 days a week.
Right.
So as long as the city's open 5 days a week and it's staffed effectively, I think scheduling falls under my purview on what department is scheduled as far as what is concerned. I'm not a huge fan of 410, but it does work in some areas better than it does others, especially with providing better access outside of someone's work hours so they can come in before or after work to get stuff done. As long as the park's open the entire 5-day work week.
Right.
I don't know if it works for every single department or the efficiency of it. You gave a good example of Steve was the only one working on my project and I can't get in there. So
right.
I don't know if it works for everybody in every scenario, but it's definitely something that we can look at.
Okay. Any other comments on this one? My last one is, let's just, instead of us having only owning the ball with EV charging infrastructure, there have got to be private companies out there that we could partner with that they could put the charge station at the street light.
If you gave a program away to give right away at a nominal cost, you would be inundated. The city of Orlando, 46% of Orlando's charging stations are free. 54% that means are not. So if you gave right of way and designated right of way areas to somebody that could put a station in and they could charge, I'm not talking about outrageous rates, but competitive charging rates, I will guarantee you that they will fill those places.
Can we look into that or about doing an RFP for that?
Yeah, I think that should be part of this. And I'm just adding it there because
Yeah.
it might not be, I don't think it's appropriate for us to be inventing the wheel of trying to become.
No, I agree. I think that's absolutely the way to do it, and I think.
And the main roadblock to more EV,
Infrastructure.
It's basically there's just not enough charging stations around. So if we can find a public-private partnership or a couple different vendors that can come in and help us, and at every street light, like you're right, you don't have to do all that and plumb up a whole new thing if you can just tap into anyway.
So it depends on the charger, so.
No, I know that.
Yeah,
I'm just
we'll
saying.
test it, set the test
I'm not
chargers.
right.
It depends on the stage 1 or stage 2. Stage 2 is the 240 volt.
But I don't want us to get into the EV charging infrastructure business. Let's let professionals do that, and if they can charge a nominal fee with a point of sale system, great.
Okay.
All right.
Yep. And lastly, we're looking at local government. In 2019, the city established the charge for the Sustainability Committee. And recently, last year, the Community Services Department hosted the first annual workshop for event coordinators on how to host a green or more environmentally friendly special event.
And then we canceled all of them.
Yes. They were all green. They're all gone. So our goals in this area, we want to incorporate sustainability into future city policy-making decisions. We're going to conduct the first biannual review of the Sustainable Action Plan by 2023. That means we need to implement it soon. Improving staff awareness of sustainability. 75% of the city staff trained in sustainability issues by 2022. And I just wanted to say, when we practice this skill, we want to cultivate it, then it will become natural to us. So as we introduce that, there's some objectives or actions on how to train up city staff into normal sustainability practices, and those that we can share amongst departments as well. And then lastly, we want to bolster city advocacy on sustainability issues, identify sustainable legislation and policies for city advocacy, and then prioritize those on an annual basis, or as the legislative sessions are occurring.
Super.
Yes.
Any additions or questions from my colleagues?
No, looks good. I think we did really good.
Are you just getting tired?
I was going to say, why not 100% of staff trained by 2022, but.
We have a program that has new employees come on board. You'll see that we can implement some like little welcome kits for them on how to be sustainable. But there's always some that really aren't located in the offices that are really what the main policies are that we're trying to introduce. So for example, fire and police, they're out in their vehicles. It's going to be a little bit harder for them to participate in some of the sustainability objectives, but
right.
So that's why we used the 75. It was hard to get all of staff on the same page with that.
I'd like a target in the city advocacy on issues to be some sort of marketing component to the general public. When I have conversations with people around, water conservation, energy, lowering energy use, sustainable development in the cities, a lot of times people think it's just some tree-hugging, hippie kind of thing to do. Mm-hmm. But sometimes people just say, well, if we can't afford to do this, we can't afford to do that. But all of these policies, all of these things that we're trying to prioritize save us significant costs in the future, sometimes in the very near future with a minor investment. So I think a focus on the biggest shift we need to do to help educate is just to, and we don't need to develop this, so there's lots of information out there, but find ways to put together a marketing or some sort of promotion and marketing thing to the general public to say, this is what Stewart is trying to do, and here's why. We're going to save the taxpayers money over time. We're going to make small investments that are going to yield great returns over time. Ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure kind of thing. I think a promotional effort around our initiatives so that our citizens know what we're doing and can be proud of it. And then maybe we can start winning some awards. We're not just the happiest seaside town, but we're going to be the greenest seaside town. A marketing component has to be part of this.
Okay.
I think it really set the example too. You really do. It helps everyone else when they're watching what you're doing.
Yeah.
You need a mascot.
Sammy the sailfish.
That's a good idea.
Sammy's gonna change outfits again.
Figure out your retirement job.
Sparky the sailfish.
Yeah.
Energy reuse.
The joint meeting is on October 21st.
Oh,
Yes, I
good.
was gonna say.
21st.
If you really want to show your sustainability efforts to the community, you should probably give your city manager a Tesla. I'm just saying.
Yes.
Oh.
Can't the city manager get his own Tesla?
You mean, I'm guessing you want a Model S?
Mr. Mayor, before you
But
close.
the city manager's gonna move into the city, right?
The vice mayor has a question.
No, it's not a question. I just.
21 at 9, right?
I just wanted to say the 21st at 9. I just wanted to say that a few weeks ago, there was a question about the scheduling, and it was the meeting on the 14th. But I made an announcement like a few months ago, or told the city manager at least, that there was a meeting that I couldn't go to because I had a hearing starting at 3:30 on today. And when the 14th came around, we realized that it was today and this meeting was already scheduled. So that's why I came in like almost at the end of the meeting, or probably would have missed it if it didn't stay this long, because I had already had a hearing scheduled for all afternoon, and we didn't finish it after 5:30, and I had to clear up some stuff with my client and the other side. And
That's okay, vice mayor.
this
The
is why
city manager filled us in. That's okay.
I just didn't want anybody to think that I just waltzed in here 2.5 hours late or something.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to steal your spot. Ms. Elliger, are there any closing remarks you'd like to make before
I
we?
do have just a few. I'll be brief. Okay, so priority should be given to these policies, programs, or projects that would benefit multiple or all three factors. So we've got the people, profit, and planet, and then the sweet spot would be where one of those satisfies all three, and that would be our sustainable moment. And going back to Aristotle, he recommended that the moderate way, or the intermediate between two extremes, has the best way to make progress without being overwhelmed. Because let's face it, we've tackled quite a few issues in being sustainable. So for an example, falling in the middle between two extremes of being a coward or being reckless would be bravery. Or being somber or buffoon is having a good sense of humor. So sustainability would fall in the middle of the extremes of doom and denial. So if we take daily baby steps towards the center, I think we will achieve great success. So where do we stand? Once this plan, we'll update it with what you have suggested and recommended tonight. We'll bring that back for you to take a look at. But what Commissioner McDonald had mentioned was, working on another plan. A great deal of work has gone into this. The committee realized that they had committed for a year or however long it took to commit to making the plan. But now what? Do we want to recommit for 5 more years? What do you see us moving forward in being responsible for? Is it just to take direction from the city commission and the city manager to monitor and report on the progress of these goals? Or what do you see, or do you see a green task force? Or how do you see this plan coming to fruition and getting carried out so that it doesn't just go by the wayside?
I see this as a starting point.
Should we?
The action items, biannual or annual review with, I like the idea of a green task force that would review it. And
My only concern is that, right now it's it's good that it's intradepartmental, but the distributed setup, it needs somebody to kind of like sum it all up, and that I know that's currently you, Ann. you know, it's just a lot of, it's a lot of extra responsibility for one person to be the manager of that. So I just want to make sure that it's not too onerous on any one staff member, and that it works the way it has been with the green task force. Does it make more sense for it to still be distributed and have it be reportable to the city manager and that via, then to the commission? Or do we eventually talk about identifying a staff person that their you know, main job is to kind of manage this and grow it and implement it and look for, you know, manage the development of this? I don't know. We start with this task force and just grow it from there? I guess.
Well,
Commissioner Matheson said by yearly or meet every 6 months. Maybe we should see where he's come along, or the managers come along, or
Well, it's more
what
than
would
just
you say?
evaluating or reporting on it. I mean, I need somebody to actually implement.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
taking the action.
So you
implement.
could, for instance, go out on our, go on our feet for the charging stations or whatever. You know, I need somebody who's going to set that stuff in mind, keep it on track.
Right, you need an overall, like, kind of
But would
green
there be some-
department manager.
Well,
Is that
what
something
do-
that would come under Ben, or is that a different thing?
Sure.
Assistant to the
Yeah, Commissioner.
You know, I think one of the possibilities would be for Dave to go through each goal and objective and allocate each one to a different department head
Right.
based on their expertise. For example, you know, stormwater, sewer, drinking water, that's going to need to be done within the Public Works
Right,
Department, you know, the utilities, water utilities department, utility department. And developing any type of building codes is gonna have to be done in development. So I think that the best thing would be for the manager to go through maybe with staff and determine which department will each objective belongs to, and delegate it to that department head, and then they can work on it. Now you're not putting it all on one person. We're not creating you know, because if we say we created a position, now that's money that's taking away from implementing it. So if each one of these, and there may be some that's done in the city manager's office, some that can be done in community service, some that can be done in public works, development, so forth.
The legislative stuff Ben can do. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you there. I think, and especially now heading into this next year, we've already gone through mostly our budget cycle. I think we would eventually have a discussion into next year or the year following if we felt like we needed to grow this into its own department or its own position. But for now, a distributed model with the
But city
manager
manager would still need some type of
delegating.
coordinating.
Yeah, my new assistant city manager.
Yeah.
Well, the task force could still review it every year or so, but it would be broken up into departments.
Yeah.
Ben seems to be volunteering on top of his full-time river advocate.
Hey, let's hear from Mr. Hogarth directly.
I appreciate it, Commissioners. Thank you. I'm not volunteering per se. When I spoke to Ian, we were working on this plan with the rest of the team. It's such an onerous, you know, undertaking for one person. I thought it was going to be totally unfair for any one person to stand up and be responsible for this. In some cities, they do have that, but they also have resources and assistance and a lot of other things. I think it's the direction that you're all discussing is a great way to start it out. I certainly will be happy to volunteer whatever free time I do have.
Is that?
I think I'm going on I think, was it 24/7? Is that the schedule?
Yeah,
I think
right.
we're on it when we're salaried. So, you know, I think it's a good direction. I have seen cities start out that way. Even Orlando started out with a lot of, and this was a decade ago now, they started out with a lot of investments in different departments and a lot of discussions before they finally had a full department,
Right.
an office of resiliency. You'll see a lot of times it's just one person, but that person answers to so many different department heads and is usually under the city manager.
Right.
There's a lot of ways to implement that. I think the task force is what the committee came up with because it's the easiest way for us to really look at maybe the first 6 months to a year of this plan rolling out and where the greatest challenges of implementation are going to be. Then the city manager will be able to talk to the committee or to the task force, whoever that is, see where the challenges are, then come back and report to you and say, here's where in the SIP plan, or capital improvements, what is on the 5-year target list.
Right.
And that'll help you to better understand where to go from there. So as one employee, yes, I'm always happy to volunteer my part of the time, but this is going to take probably several employees, just like this committee did, helping the city manager to implement. So I hope that makes more sense as far as what we were talking about.
Yes, thank you, Mr.
Involved,
Hogarth.
more buy-in there will be with staff as well.
Well, yeah, and I will say, we thank you again. I know I can speak for all of us. We will all thank you all for volunteering and going above and beyond. But what I noticed here is that, this was thorough. You guys went through and put together goals and actions and a nice big thorough presentation that touches on every single department. And, this is just something that was extra responsibility that was thrown on staff, and staff dug in. So that to me says that this is something that we already have staff buy-in on. Staff wants the city to be sustainable, wants us to move forward on this. So I think the biggest hurdle with sometimes in projects like this is, oh, do we really have to, one more thing to do? Staff took this and really dug in, so.
Or it could be the commissioners not wanting to.
You can recognize Ann.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
thank you to
You
the,
sure can.
Ann and all of her team.
So I feel like we've got we've got a good momentum here. Clearly, staff is interested in this. Everybody wants to see, not just from the commission side, but the staff wants to see the city progress on this path anyway. So great.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So we'll stick with the green task force, green team.
Green team.
Okay.
Can we go?
Yes, I just really want to thank, I was the facilitator of the committee, but believe me, every single member up there contributed greatly, and they all really deserve a big round of applause.
Thank you.
They were
Thank you.
excellent.
Thank you all. Really, really appreciate it. Okay, so if there's no further discussion, we will adjourn at 6:55.
Is it that way?